After the new gene seed had been cultivated, the Emperor summoned Axis and Kasha at once. Lionel Johnson, having been sent back to Holy Terra briefly by the Emperor, had already departed again for the Great Crusade. He always put the Emperor's command first. So it was Axis and Kasha who arrived in the Emperor's underground laboratory. A huge incubator dominated the vault, rows of perfectly rounded gene seeds arranged within. There were two ways to obtain gene seed: directly from a Primarch or by cultivation from a Space Marine. These seeds, however, were unlike the tainted, fleshy-budded forms the galaxy had come to expect. They were pure, clean, and almost unnaturally perfect. "Do you see?" the Emperor said, guiding Axis up to the tank. "These are your gene seeds, Axis, far more perfect than those I cultivated before. And we've limited the transformation," the Emperor added with a smile. "Their combat amplification tops out at 5 times normal, not 50 or 100 like some other variations." Axis studied them, expression unreadable. "They are indeed remarkable. I once purified the gene seeds of Magnus, Lionel Johnson, and Russ with chi, and they also took on a round shape," he said. "Lion reported that to me. Your chi energy is extraordinary. These are even cleaner than the gene seeds extracted directly from a gene seed Primarch," the Emperor said. He explained what Axis already half suspected. Even if a Primarch's gene seed was refined, it still traced its origin to the warp and could become infected over time. In the early designs, gene seeds were perfectly round. Later, they accumulated warp taint and developed those fleshy nodules. Axis's chi could purify warp energy, but nothing could guarantee it would never retaint a seed in the future. Except, the Emperor said, Axis's own gene seed. Only Axis's stock could be guaranteed free of warp corruption. "Axis, now inject chi into these gene seeds to purify them further," the Emperor instructed. "Then we will begin the experiment." "The initial protocol is still unproven," Axis objected. "Can't we find test subjects instead of using my wolf pack? Everything so far is hypothesis. There aren't even completed experimental subjects. I won't risk the space wolves who've bled at my side." Leman Russ had already told his brothers some of the truth when they arrived on Terra. They were willing to accept Axis's gene seed, but Axis would not endanger them needlessly. "Good," the Emperor said approvingly. "Taking responsibility for your gene seed offspring is a noble trait. Then we will use test subjects." He turned to Marcardo, who bowed and left to retrieve sealed sleepers, recruits from earlier experiments whose superhuman organs had been implanted and then stowed in stasis. The Emperor indicated that these dormant individuals might now be saved by the new seeds. Axis placed his palm against the cultivation tank and began to seed the gene seeds with chi. This time he called on a portion of his Super Saiyan power. The seeds, being derived from S cells, responded all the better to that quality of energy. They awoke like things that had waited lifetimes for a single spark, greedily absorbing the chi. Axis planted a chi spark in each seed to ensure it could survive inside a host. After some tens of minutes, the task was done. The seeds pulsed faintly with a golden glow. "Miraculous, Axis," the Emperor said quietly. "Your gene seeds are the most unique I have ever seen. With them, perhaps we can cultivate a special Astartes chapter, one resistant to the warp and dedicated to combating its evils." He outlined what he and Marcardo had been discussing, a small, secret chapter. No more than 1,000 strong, likely far fewer, composed entirely of the elite. They would wear Aegis-pattern Terminator armor, sanctified with relics of the greatest psychers. From their training, they would be steeped in the lore of daemons. Their purpose would be singular, to strike at the warp's demonic forces. "A special chapter to hunt daemons?" Axis said, shocked. The thought that he might be the gene seed Primarch of the Grey Knights, the Emperor's last gift before the Golden Throne, was almost too much to believe. "Exactly," the Emperor replied. "If your seeds adapt perfectly, I will draw the nucleus of this chapter from your legion's elite." Kasha's eyes narrowed. "Father," she said on Axis' behalf, "if not Axis's gene seeds, whose would you have used for such a chapter?" The Emperor only smiled, then deflected. "That plan is Imperial secret. It cannot be revealed." He continued, however, to explain the contingency he had considered. He could have used psychic purification to cleanse portions of Magnus's gene seed, forming a chapter shielded from the warp and yet without any progeny bond to Magnus, one that would, instead, bear a strange bond with himself. That route carried risks, though. If Axis's seeds worked, the Emperor would use them instead. But my gene seeds don't possess psychic power, Axis protested. They don't grant psyker abilities. How would they cope with daemons if they cannot wield psychic force themselves? Easy, the Emperor said. We will implant your seeds into psykers. I will bestow psychic blessings upon the seeds. I cleansed other gene seeds with psychic power before. I can do the same here. The result will be a chapter with extraordinary resistance to the warp. Axis considered the implications. So the chapter will be formed from psyker hosts carrying my seeds? Yes, they will be secret. Their existence will be known only to the highest echelons of the Imperium. They will wear Aegis Terminator armor, wield the most potent anti-daemon war gear, and receive the most stringent training against the warp. And they will be independent of my legion, operating in secrecy? Axis asked. Independent and deniable, the Emperor confirmed. Because all members will be psykers, the chapter will number no more than 1,000, more likely 700 or 800 at most. He paused, then offered two possible names. I have considered Grey Knights, hidden in the shadows of the Imperium, or Golden Knight, to reflect the golden transformation your gene seed enables. Axis grinned despite himself. Both are good names. Why limit to one? Why not two chapters, one Grey Knights and one Golden Knight? The Emperor shook his head. At most, one such chapter can be formed. I would gladly form more if I could. He let the suggestion settle before finishing. Your legion may take the mantle of the Golden Knights. This special secret chapter will be called the Grey Knights. Axis felt the weight of the moment, the Emperor's plan, the secrecy, and the implication that his gene seed would be the foundation for an order of daemon hunters. It was beyond anything he had expected when he first set foot on Terra, but the seeds before him pulsed with golden light and promise, and the Emperor's voice left no room for doubt about his intentions. Golden Knight? That name still sounds a little odd to me. My legion would be better off called the Cyan Legion. I actually like Cyan Legion, Axis said. Cyan Legion? What kind of name is that? In time, the members of your legion will be able to transform, their hair and auras blazing gold. If we're choosing a name, it needs to carry that weight, something with gold. If you don't like Golden Knight, what about Golden Legion? Shining Legion, Gilded Legion, Radiant Gold Knights, Holy Radiance Knights, the Holy Legion. The Emperor rattled off a dozen more options, each more ornate than the last. Axis rolled his eyes. It was hard sometimes to corral his father-in-law's flair for the dramatic. Still, the Emperor's choices were undeniably imposing, perfect for inspiring awe in the masses. Fine, my legion will be called Golden Knight, Axis decided. He could always use some of the Emperor's grander titles for sub-legions later. By then, Micardo had already wheeled several stasis pods into the underground lab. The test subjects had completed the initial Astartes augmentations. Only the gene seed replacement and the black carapace remained. Emperor, I've brought 4 test subjects. That should be enough to start, Micardo reported. These warriors have had their superhuman organs enhanced. Only the gene seed and black carapace implants remain. How many space marines like this are in stasis? Axis asked. About 1,000 in total, dormant, Micardo answered. Over 3,000 had been modified originally, but more than 1,000 succumbed to complications with Axis's gene seed. If the current protocol worked, the surviving 1,000 would be added to Axis's own recruits, giving the new legion an initial force of over 2,000 to build on. Begin, the Emperor said. They opened a pod and began the surgery. First, they removed the old thyroid region gene seeds, then the chest gene seed. A new gene seed, faintly golden and humming with potential, was implanted into the chest cavity. The stasis subject's physiology reacted instantly. Axis's S cells, engineered to mediate between human and Cyan tissue, began to integrate, rapidly supplanting the more aggressive Cyan cell behavior. The monitoring screens fluctuated as the subject's heart raced and the enhanced organs surged, then settled under the influence of the S cells. Where blue-purple veins had once stood out beneath the skin, a healthier glow spread. Muscle tension eased into controlled strength. Vital signs stabilized. Vital signs are extremely stable, Micardo said, excitement barely hidden. The conflict between the two cell lines is dying down. No, it's reached symbiosis. The Emperor leaned closer to the virtual feed. He watched the previously turbulent Saiyan cells being enveloped by a gentler cellular architecture. Axis's S cells formed a precise mesh between human and Saiyan tissue, a balancing network that allowed both to coexist without the destructive overgrowth typical of unrestrained Saiyan physiology. At one point, a flicker of golden chi leaked from the subject's pores and vanished. Axis explained quietly, "Some Super Saiyan traits activate, but they're controllable. They'll get a power boost without berserk instability." What they had produced was a heavily attenuated Super Saiyan, a transformation nowhere near the ferocity of a true Saiyan ascension, incapable of defeating a full-blooded Saiyan on its own, but sufficient to multiply strength in a predictable, regulated way. It was modest compared to Axis's own amplification. Axis could boost himself 50 to 100-fold, but still a useful tool. Mercado recorded the metrics. Muscle density up by 30%, bone strength improved roughly 20% over baseline Astartes. Metabolic rate down 20%, meaning more endurance and a longer effective lifespan. Saiyans naturally live longer than humans, around 150 to 200 years, and their combat conditioning preserves their prime appearance. Axis's gene seed offspring would inherit some of that longevity. Their lifespans would exceed those of ordinary Astartes by decades, and they would retain peak combat capability until old age finally claimed them. The Emperor smiled at the readouts. These were the sort of warriors he wanted. The next step was crucial. How long could a Golden Knight sustain Axis's attenuated Super Saiyan state before the strain became dangerous? For now, Axis's graft allowed a maximum 5-fold amplification in the recruits. Mercado finished the final work by implanting the black carapace in the test subject. It would take months for the armor interfaces and nodes to grow into the skin. Mercado, begin mass modification immediately. I want 1,000 Golden Knights awakened within a month and all surgical stages completed, the Emperor ordered. Understood, Mercado replied. In the following weeks, dormant warriors underwent the full replacement and black carapace procedures. At the same time, under Axis's direction, veterans from the Space Wolves were brought to Holy Terra. After an earnest address from the Emperor and Axis, those who had once carried Russ's gene seed formally became Axis's gene seed offspring. Experienced Astartes needed only a gene seed exchange, a day or two of surgery, and then a period of adaptation. Axis selected several elite modified veterans for an immediate trial. The Emperor, accompanied by a contingent of custodes, came to observe. This trial would test the new Marine's true combat worth. The theoretical assessment was promising. Axis's gene seed offspring should be 30 to 50% stronger than standard Astartes in baseline form, and when transformed their power could approach Custodes level. With additional chi enhancement from Axis, their potency could climb even higher. 4 against 1, the Emperor directed. Let your gene seed offspring fight a Custodes. Caesar, an old friend of Axis who commanded the accompanying Custodes squad, nodded and removed his ornate armor with his team's help. In the center of the training ground, he stood in plain black undergarments. So did Axis's 4 candidates. This was a raw, bare-bodied test. No powered armor, no augmentation of external gear. The Custodes moved first. His speed was lightning quick, each strike precise and devastating. Within moments he had sent one Golden Knight skidding into the wall, another, folded under a spinning kick, a third kneeling and coughing blood after an elbow blow. The last barely registered his opponent's hand before a chop to the neck dropped him. The disparity between a baseline Astartes recruit and a Custodes was absolute. Just as the Custodes was about to end the encounter, something shifted. One by one, the 4 Marines rose, eyes different. A hum of golden chi filled the air. Their hair flashed brilliant gold and their pupils burned. Muscle and bone tightened as Axis's S-cells sparked. They had engaged the golden transformation. Their strength and reflexes leapt, about 5 times their prior levels. The Custodes' expression tightened. He had been warned. A Golden Knight lunged with a fist that left a golden afterimage. The Custodes staggered to absorb it. The tide turned. The training ground thundered as the Golden Knight's blows rained down. Speed and precision remained on the Custodes' side, but the sheer, amplified force of 4 transformed Marines overwhelmed him. Eventually, a crushing punch cracked his defense and sent him stumbling. The Emperor nodded for the fight to stop. The Golden Knights let their energy fade and sank to their knees. Transformation fatigue took hold. The side effects were primarily exhaustion. The attenuated Super Saiyans still imposed a physiological cost, but nothing catastrophic for short durations. Micardo immediately led the examinations. In their normal state, these four cannot match a Custodes, he reported. But once transformed, individual power approaches Custodes level. Together, they can overpower one. The load afterward depends on duration. 3 minutes of transformation leads to manageable fatigue. Beyond 5 minutes, they'll need 1 to 2 hours of rest. More than 10 minutes requires a full day to recover. Sustained transformation approaching 30 minutes risks cardiac arrest and cellular collapse. He summarized, the Golden Transformation was an exceptional augmentation, enormously amplifying combat effectiveness while remaining controllable within strict temporal limits. Short engagements of up to 3 minutes offered the best balance of power and survivability. If they stayed transformed too long, the S-cell's amplification would overwhelm cardiac and cellular systems. The new Golden Knights had power, but only within the bounds the body could bear. 143. New Primarch Axis. This is the maximum intensity transformation effect. If the intensity is reduced to around 2 times, then they can at least maintain the state and fight for 10 minutes without harming their bodies. They would only need to deactivate the transformation and rest for an hour after fighting, with no fatal damage, Micardo said. In the original design, Axis's Super Saiyan transformation was capped at 5 times. The base was 2 times, but this time, to test the full effect, all the Golden Knights activated the 5 times extreme transformation. On the battlefield, Astartes would rarely need this level. Space Marines implanted with Axis's gene seed are inherently stronger than ordinary Astartes. The 5 times transformation is a desperate ultimate move, saved for critical moments. In normal situations, the base form, 2 times or 3 times transformations are more than enough. Teacher, your plan is good, but I must say this. S-cells can't be restrained. As S-cells increase in their bodies, their strength grows and their physiology evolves. This transformation should only get stronger, Axis said. If you underestimate the Saiyan bloodline or the power of S-cells, you'll be very wrong. The potential of Saiyans is essentially infinite. The initial Saiyan transformation has a baseline amplification of 50 times. These Astartes have been restricted, yet if powerful space marines like Sigismund, Abaddon, or Calgar appear in later generations, they could remove those restrictions on their own. As long as their bodies can withstand it, S-cells will keep empowering them. Going to 10 times or 20 times enhancement wouldn't be impossible if the body can handle it. Frankly, Axis's gene seed is the most perfect, safest, most efficient, and most powerful of all gene seeds used by Space Marines, unparalleled. It resists warp erosion and grants incredible transformation abilities. If such a gifted Astartes truly emerges, that's a good thing. The restriction is not meant to stifle power, but to protect them. If they can safely activate higher transformations, then as their gene father, you may guide them, the Emperor said. The Astartes numbers had already climbed past 1.5 million and were still rising. The Emperor estimated that if the Great Crusade continued a few decades more, Astartes might top 2.5 million, or even break 3 million. Once their numbers reached that scale, many exceptionally gifted Astartes would inevitably appear. Some of today's top warriors can already rival the Custodes, and a few can even defeat them. If those powerhouses received Axis's gene seed, the results would be staggering. Unfortunately, most of those top warriors are leaders in their legions, so they can't be reimplanted. Axis, you must establish a rule within your legion. In normal combat, they may freely use 2 times and 3 times transformations. To activate 4 times or 5 times states in combat requires approval from an officer of captain rank or higher. Even then, activation should be limited to 3 minutes. This is to protect ordinary Astartes, the Emperor ordered. Transformation is useful, but it must be kept within safe, controllable limits, or chaos will follow. I agree, but add one more clause. It may still be used when facing a life-or-death crisis, only when the extreme transformation will save their lives, or when they've resolved to perish with the enemy. You can't be rigid. If transforming will clearly defeat the enemy, why not? Even dying together can be a kind of gain. At least you take someone down with you, Axis replied. I fear this transformation could become a suicidal attack, the Emperor said pointedly. When mortals blindly worship and follow you, they might do very foolish things. The Imperium worshipped him, even treated him as a god, though he repeatedly enforced the imperial truth that he was not a god. If there were a standard for godhood, he would fit it. I will teach them not to misuse it, especially not to use it for pointless suicidal attacks, Axis promised. That reassures me. This legion will be entrusted to you. I will soon announce your status as a Gene Seed Primarch. You will be recognized as a Gene Seed Primarch created by me, and you will be wed to my daughter, the Imperial Princess, the Emperor declared. This was the era of the return of the Gene Seed Primarchs, so Axis's addition would not be controversial. He would simply be treated as another returning Primarch. Axis nodded. He would officially gain the status of a Gene Seed Primarch and enter the Imperium's highest councils. A month later, 3,000 brand-new Space Marines in golden power armor stood before Axis, the nascent Golden Knights Legion, a completely new Astartes force. Under the Emperor's command, Holy Terra had allocated recruits to Axis for Astartes modification. The 3,000 recruits Lion L. Johnson had promised, men of the Caliban Knightly Order, had also been sent and would be implanted with Axis's gene seed, though their modification would take time. On other worlds, local governors were ordered to select suitable youths and send them to Terra. The Emperor intended to expand Axis's legion to over 100,000 within 10 years, making it a full legion for the Great Crusade. Hail the Emperor! Hail the great Gene Father Axis! The 3,000 Space Marines stood ramrod straight and saluted with the Imperial Aquila toward Axis and the Emperor. My Gene Seed offspring, you are a newly formed legion, the Golden Knights. Make me proud. Make the Imperium proud, Axis said, stepping forward to address his new warriors. Great Gene Father, we are your Gene Seed offspring. We are the Golden Sons. For the Golden Knights Legion, they roared. Golden light erupted into the sky, burning around them like living flame. Their hair and brows went gold. Even in this weakened form, the Super Saiyan transformation was visually stunning, and their strength had genuinely increased, demigod-like to ordinary mortals. Axis is also a Gene Seed Primarch created by me. He will be the 18th returning Gene Seed Primarch, after Chagatai Khan, the Emperor announced to Terra's high officials. Axis's former identity as a space wolf had been erased. He would return to the Imperium with a new official history and a high office. At that moment, only 4 Gene Seed Primarchs had yet to return, those of the 12th, 19th, 8th, and 20th Legions. The plaza of the Imperial Palace thundered with cheers. Axis stood beside the Emperor, smiling and waving at the common folk beyond the palace. He had grown to about 3.5 meters in height. The power of Ki infused through his body could temporarily enlarge his physique, much like Master Roshi transforming into a hulking strongman. Even without Super Saiyan mode, Axis could use Ki to magnify himself, just as the Emperor used psychic power to present himself as a giant. It was, in part, for show. A Gene Seed Primarch should look the part. 2 other returning Gene Seed Primarchs stood by the Emperor, Rogal Dorn of the 7th Legion and Horus of the 16th. They had been summoned to witness the formation of Axis's new legion and his investiture. To this newly returned brother, they offered their blessings and welcomed him into the circle of Primarchs. Axis's past achievements with the Space Wolves were preserved, but his prior war against the Redan was reinterpreted. Official history would say he had been discovered by Lion L. Johnson, Leman Russ, and Chagatai Khan, then joined the Imperium and played a crucial role in the Raidan War, defeating the Raidan and returning to the Emperor's embrace. Silence! I have one more announcement. The Emperor's voice rolled across the plaza, filling every corner of Holy Terra. The cheering crowds and the officials who had been celebrating fell silent at once. Heads turned upward to the golden figure hovering on the dais. Everyone waited to hear whatever the Lord of Mankind would say. Today, I will introduce someone to you, someone very important to me. At the Emperor's signal, Kasha inhaled deeply. She wore a pale purple robe, gripped a staff pulsing with psychic energy, and stepped slowly to his side. Curiosity rippled through the people. Even Horus and Rogel Dorn, two of the Gene Seed Primarchs, watched with visible interest. Kasha had always seemed to be a powerful psyker in Axis's retinue. Most had assumed she was merely a subordinate. Now, standing beside the Emperor, her presence suggested a different truth. Of the Primarchs, only Lionel Johnson knew her real identity. Even Leman Russ remained unaware. "You may be wondering who she is," the Emperor continued. "I announce to you now that she is my daughter. She is my true daughter, the Imperial Princess of the Imperium of Man." The declaration hit like thunder. Whispering broke out among the citizens and the Lords of Terra. No one had expected the Emperor to have a daughter. The Primarchs looked stunned. Their father had a daughter. Were they to call her sister? "Kasha was born centuries ago," the Emperor explained. "Like me, she is effectively immortal. She does not age. For some time she served on a secret mission, helping me to find and shepherd our new Gene Seed Primarch, Axis. She has only recently returned to the Imperium and to my side. She is the eldest sister of all the Gene Seed Primarchs." The Emperor had sired many children over the years, but Kasha alone had inherited something like his immortal constitution. Offspring born to mortal women did not inherit his longevity. They lived only marginally longer than ordinary humans. Erda had been his true companion through it all. Even if they separated from time to time, they always returned to one another, until a certain rift drove them apart. In that schism, even Kasha had been misled. She believed she was doing right by aiding her mother, unaware that her actions harmed her younger siblings. The Emperor's rationale for keeping the Gene Seed Primarchs close to him was grim and practical. His psychic sight and the curse of the four gods had shown him that half of them might one day turn against him. Raising them on Holy Terra was at least a way to bind their loyalty and postpone that betrayal. But Erda's choices and the snares of chaos had scattered the Primarchs across the galaxy. He had lost the ability to control all of their fates. "Now Kasha has atoned," the Emperor said. "She realizes how wrong she was. She guided Axis, the strongest human in the Imperium aside from myself. Axis alone holds a potential I could not fully unlock, and together they will be powerful." "Father," Horus blurted from beside the Emperor, incredulous. "So this Kasha is actually our elder sister?" "That is correct," the Emperor replied with a small smile. "Kasha is your elder sister in the truest biological sense. She had been cultivated as a child of both him and Erda, and she had inherited their immortal physiology. Strengthened by Axis's chi, Kasha's power had only grown. Her immortal traits were slowly awakening." Rogel Dorn, composed as ever, stepped forward. He bowed and gave a crisp salute. "Pleased to meet you, Imperial Princess Kasha, Father's eldest daughter and the elder sister of us Gene Seed Primarchs." Dorn's steadiness betrayed no disturbance. One more elder sibling would not alter his sense of duty. Kasha accepted the bow with a smile and returned Dorn's salute. Horus, recovering, approached and bowed as well. "Greetings, elder sister Kasha," he said. He remained the Emperor's eldest son in his own mind. One more sister did not change that. The crowd responded in kind. "Praise the Emperor. Praise the Imperial Princess. Blessings upon the Imperial Princess. Welcome home, Imperial Princess." Flowers rained from the plaza as the citizens celebrated. This day marked two great returns to Holy Terra: the emergence of a new Gene Seed Primarch and the revelation of the Emperor's daughter. In the crowd beyond the palace gates, a woman wrapped in a dark robe watched the pair on the platform with an expression made of equal parts sorrow and something harder to read. Kasha had been forgiven. She had been released from her prison. How had that come to pass? And the new Primarch, he did not seem to be one of those from the mountain wastes. She did not remember him. Erda had been in hiding. For reasons unknown, by a strange coincidence, this immortal, one of the few besides the Emperor and Micardo who possessed such terrible psychic strength, had come to Holy Terra, to the ground where she had once fought. The Emperor had long believed Erda captured by chaos, though her will had never truly bent. After the last great incident, Erda took a portion of the Thunder Warriors and retreated into seclusion. She had returned to Terra only a dozen days before. The Emperor's gaze narrowed. Even from the dais he had seen the robed figure in the crowd and recognized her at a single look. Erda, the woman he had loved and hated in equal measure. He had always known her possible hiding places and could have found her at any time with custodian blades or an Astartes squad. He had never chosen to. Enemies that threatened mankind would be cut down without mercy. With Erda, he had always kept back a tiny, foolish hope that she might one day see what she had done and come back from her errors. Axis, standing at the Emperor's side, also narrowed his eyes. By the sense of chi he possessed, he felt a powerful presence among the crowd, an immortal's life sign, so strong it made him prickly with awareness. An immortal woman, the kind who could make the Emperor look twice, and she was here. Axis felt a quick thrill at the thought. He had not expected Kasha's mother to show herself on Terra. So, old man, what do you plan to do? Let it pass, or make this woman who scattered the Primarchs across the stars answer for her deeds. Given the Emperor's nature, Axis thought, if he truly sought vengeance, Erda would not have returned alive. Axis remembered the histories, the tales in the chronicles where Erda had been slain by Erebus during the siege of Terra. What a fool she had been to think herself immune to Chaos's designs. Her free will, Axis believed, had been nothing but what the Chaos gods allowed her to see. She had thought that restraining the Emperor's power would prevent tyranny. She had not seen that her choices unspooled the very tragedy that birthed the Age of Strife. Axis, what are you looking at? The Emperor called softly, still smiling and radiant as he greeted the people, but his words were sent to Axis by psychic link. Axis's glance had not gone unnoticed. Father, Axis answered, his voice low with eagerness. I detect an immortal among the crowd. You know I can sense chi. Her life aura is enormous. She stands out like a beacon. There are many immortals in the human realms, the Emperor said, a touch strained. She may have come merely to observe. Father, Axis pressed, an idea brightening his face. Our Imperium needs strength. Her psychic power is great, only slightly shy of Teacher Micardo. She is only a bit weaker than the current Kasha. She could be of tremendous use. Let me try to parley with her. The Emperor? Axis's shout cut through the tumult on the plaza and drew every eye upward. Horus and Rogel Dorn followed his gesture, and below them saw the robed woman. The sight made both Primarchs' hearts lurch. A sudden, inexplicable quickening ran through them like a remembered pulse. It was the same, intimate recognition they had felt when they first beheld the man on the dais, a blood-tied certainty. For a moment, both were thrown back into that first, staggering meeting with the Emperor. Father, what are you and Axis looking at? Horus demanded from the platform, his voice bright with curiosity. Inside the Emperor, a war of wills broke out. He tried to remain cold, to hide what he felt. Nothing. That's an irrelevant person, he replied, forcing himself to sound blunt and detached. He hated the lie. He hated the turmoil that the mere presence of the woman stirred in him. If he had had his way years ago, if he had been without this weakness, Erda would already be gone. He had other men, assassins trained by Micardo, Custodes, the Astartes. Any of them could have ended her. Immortality made her hard to kill, not impossible. When she had first appeared to him, he had felt something like finding the love of his life. At first, her feelings had been awe and worship. Then, in time, something more like love had quietly grown in both of them. Now, to save face, he wanted nothing more than to pretend he hadn't seen her and watch her leave. Axis, however, was less subtle than the Emperor required. He had spotted Erda and lifted his gaze in a way that pulled two Primarchs with him. Father, that person gives me a very strange feeling. It's wonderful, Horus said, struggling to describe the echo inside his chest. Rogel Dorn stood silent, composed as ever. He let the younger son speak. Horus, raised with a unique, almost worshipful father love, burned to know what the feeling meant. Primarch minds linked facts and instincts in an instant. The figure below was a woman. Children were born of man and woman. He had always thought of himself as formed only from the Emperor's seed, no mother mentioned, but the sensation tugging at Horus said otherwise. This woman was his mother. The Emperor, sensing Horus's direction, countered with a showy gesture. I also have a joyous announcement for all the people of the Empire, he boomed, projecting his voice over the plaza. Soon the Empire will hold a grand wedding. My daughter Kasha, eldest princess of the Empire, will soon be married. The crowd roared its approval, thunderous and eager. The Emperor didn't answer Horus. He used the proclamation like a curtain, noisy, public, unmistakable. It was a signal to Erda, "Go, leave now, and never appear before me again." Erda looked up at him on the high platform and understood. No matter what she had done, he could not bear to destroy her. If he truly had no feeling, why would he seek companionship? Why would he put so much of himself into the fate of a species? He was not an absolute god. He was still, in some essential way, a human being. She would never agree with his methods. To her, his empire, his immortality, and the way his sons were being turned into his instruments were intolerable. Humanity had moved far beyond the shackles of feudalism. She refused to see it return to them. Even amid the cheers, Horus could hear the voice in his head. In a heartbeat, the tide of propriety and fear turned into reckless momentum. Without really thinking, Horus leapt down from the platform and landed in front of Erda as she took a step away. A faint, pleased smile showed at the corner of Axis's mouth at the sight, exactly what he had hoped for. Horus, the favored son, would take the risk. If he erred, the Emperor would punish him, perhaps harshly, but he would survive. Erda froze. When she looked at the tall Primarch in white armor standing before her, the bond Horus had felt became a roar. The only word in his mind rose to his lips like truth: mother. On the platform, the Emperor's face hardened to stone. Horus had overstepped. Had his indulgence made his son reckless? Kasha's color shifted beside Axis. She recognized the woman instantly, with an intimacy, the kind that made her sick with dread. Would their father punish this woman? Kill her? Or would she have to die by Kasha's own hand to atone for past sins? Only Rogol Dorn remained impassive on the dais, the model of unblinking control. The rest below the platform were bewildered. Why had a Primarch descended into the plaza? Why was he confronting a stranger? The single word mother was lost in the crowd noise. The Emperor had already moved to take another measure. His psychic will flowed outward, sweeping the plaza into a muted stupor. Every ordinary mind dimmed under his control. Only the custodes, the Primarchs themselves, Axis, and a few onlookers remained untouched. Far below, in the Imperial Palace's depths, Micardo, the sigillite, looked up from his work on Axis's S-cells and sensed the disturbance. As a longtime friend and counselor, he knew something had gone very wrong. He set aside his instruments and bent his will. Using his own psychic gift, he vanished from the lab and reappeared at the Emperor's side, taking in the scene in one sharp sweep. The Emperor's relief was visible. He had called Micardo specifically because he did not know how else to handle this. "That woman is my mother," Kasha blurted to Axis, her voice rough. "But she's wicked, the root of all our troubles." She had been punished before for her crimes, and then forgiven only after serving Axis. To Kasha, the sight of Erda provoked rage. Axis, savoring the little chaos he'd engineered, told her to leave the matter to the Emperor. He meant for the spectacle to be observed, not solved. Micardo stepped forward toward Horus and Erda. Erda looked at her son with a complex, pleading expression. She wanted to tell him everything, to confess that she had tried to spare them, to shield them from becoming instruments of a father she loved and feared. Years ago, she had scattered them through the galaxy to keep them from being used as weapons. She had hoped to keep them safe from the destiny the Emperor had in store. What would Horus think if she told him now? "Are you my mother?" Horus demanded, pressing closer. "Stop, Horus. Don't go any closer," Micardo warned, his voice low and hard. "She's a sinner. She is not your mother." "No," Horus snapped. "You are wrong. I can feel it, the same feeling I had when I saw father." He glared at Micardo. The Primarchs, for all their power, disliked Micardo. They distrusted mortals meddling in the affairs of Titans. Micardo had the temerity to stand between Horus and a woman the son considered kin. "How dare you still appear here?" Micardo turned on Erda. "Do you think we'll let you go quietly? I never did wrong." Erda's voice trembled but carried. "I only refuse to let my children become his executioners. If not for you, we could have lived together. We could have been happy." Her hatred for Micardo was raw. It had been Micardo's persuasion, the sigillite whispering in the Emperor's ear, that drove the Emperor forward, out into the light to lead humanity. In Erda's eyes, Micardo had taken from her the man she loved. He had been her rival. At her signal, a circle of immense figures solidified around her, thunder warriors. Nearly 3 meters tall, their simple power armor rang under the plaza lights. Their weapons were leveled at Micardo. "Long time no see, Micardo," the nearest of them said through clenched teeth. "The spirits of the Thunder Warriors salute you." Micardo's face did not change. For the soldiers present, there was only the bitter memory of betrayal. Hundreds of thousands purged, slaughtered by the very future their loyalty had built. They could not accept that the man on the dais they had pledged to die for had ended them. "You are the failed products of an old era," Micardo said coldly. "You helped the Emperor unify Terra, yes, but at what cost? How many murders were committed in that unification? How many innocents were spilled for the sake of order?" "We are executioners," the giant Thunder Warrior roared. "But whose executioners? Who commanded us? Who made us? Who gave us our oaths? Was it not that lofty hypocrite?" 146. A fool uses a ruler to measure the length of others, but never measures himself. The Emperor had been merciless in dealing with the Thunder Warriors. He had sent the Custodes and the newly born Astartes to purge them. Even the First Legion had taken part in that operation. It was all for humanity's great cause, to dominate the galaxy. The Thunder Warriors' problems, however, were enormous. They were far less stable than the Astartes. "I don't want to explain this to you," Micardo said. "You wouldn't understand. Your vision isn't high enough." An ordinary soldier could not see things from the perspective of a superior, he thought. He had no intention of justifying the choices made by those in power. A dozen Custodes in gold-dawned armor had already ringed them. The Thunder Warriors' bodies were fearsome, but that did not put them on equal footing with the Custodes. Even against the Astartes, their advantage was mostly brute force. The 19 superhuman organ modifications that made the Astartes what they were had given them abilities far beyond mortal limits. Utterly ridiculous. "All I know is we were betrayed by the one we swore to serve to the death. We're nothing but sacrifices in a political game," the leading Thunder Warrior roared. Only a handful had accompanied Erda to Holy Terra. The moment she was revealed, they understood there could be no escape. They should have died decades ago. If death was to come now, they would take a custodian with them. They surged as one, not toward Horus or Micardo, but straight for the nearest Custodes. The custodian in their path sneered and swept his power glaive. A golden arc of energy cleaved the air. One Thunder Warrior at the front was pierced through the chest and fell. Another was flung aside by a boot. The Custodes' power weapons allowed nothing but afterimages in the attacker's eyes. In an instant, 5 Thunder Warriors were decapitated. The other Custodes gave no quarter. The gulf between Thunder Warriors and Custodes was absolute. Their only target was Erda. Micardo had already placed Erda under the guard of more than a dozen Custodes. Horus stood aghast. "Micardo, what are you doing? That woman is my mother, mine and the mother of all the gene-seed Primarchs," Horus said. "Some things you don't understand, Horus. Step back. Now." Micardo's voice was cool. "I will apprehend her. Surrender, Erda." Micardo's plan was simple. If Erda offered even the slightest cooperative resistance, he would create an opportunity for her to be taken away safely and out of the Emperor's reach, fulfilling the Emperor's intention. If she truly needed to die, the Assassinorum would have already done the deed. Killing her outright would tear away the last thread of humanity from the Emperor. It might force him to turn himself into a god, into a dark king. As long as she did not stand at the Emperor's side to lead him into error again, Micardo could let her live. But she had to be removed, far from Terra, far from the Imperium. Horus's face crumpled. He turned to his father with a plea in his eyes. He had craved parental love all his life. He had learned his origins, that he was a gene-seed Primarch created by the Emperor and returned to Holy Terra by the Mechanicus, and for 30 years had known a father for the first time. Those were the happiest years of his life. He had still never had a mother. Among their brothers, only Guilliman had known that kind of maternal care. Now his mother stood before him, and one of his father's most trusted subordinates was about to apprehend her. Horus could not accept it. A golden figure dropped before him, Rogold Dorn. Dorn planted himself between Horus and the line of Custodes, his expression hard and unyielding. "Stand here, brother. Don't go anywhere. Do nothing. This is the best outcome you can have," Dorn said. "Rogold Dorn, you can't be blind to who she is," Horus pleaded. "So what? What we do now is for all humanity. We obey Father. Everything else is irrelevant," Dorn replied. His loyalty was absolute. To him, a mother was a distraction, a need for mortals alone. Erda looked at Horus with a soft, appraising gaze. He was full of feeling, a living, breathing human, not a tool. Dorn, by contrast, was the cold, inexorable executioner, everything Erda had feared her son might become. All I wanted was for you to be free, Erda said quietly. I wanted you to choose your lives, not to become your father's tools. I wanted you to be flesh and blood. The Gene Seed Primarchs were born for the Great Crusade, Dorn answered. They were born to serve the Emperor, to serve humanity, nothing more. Father, Horus cried to the Emperor, can we not speak? Let us have a family talk. Whatever mistakes she's made, at least give her a chance to make amends. The Emperor's reply boomed like thunder. I was never wrong. He wronged me. My son, I am happy that you have become who you are. You are a flesh and blood human with free thought. But remember, be free, be a normal person. Do not be others' tool. You are not your father's tool. Enough. The psychic force behind the word hit Horus like a physical blow. He stumbled, but the stubbornness in his blood kept him upright. He locked eyes with his father, pleading for an answer. She, Horus began. She is nothing, the Emperor said. The weight of that dismissal rocked Horus to his core. He had spent decades as the Emperor's favored son. He had been treated not as a tool, but as a true heir. The Emperor had even planned Horus's future. After the Great Crusade had run further and the Primarchs returned, Horus would become War Master, inheritor of the Crusade. Now the Emperor's voice, like a bell, pronounced unbearable disappointment. From afar, Axis watched the scene with eager amusement. For him it was better than any drama. Kasha, beside him, pinched his waist hard. You bastard, what are you enjoying? She hissed. Axis only smiled, eyes bright with scheming mischief. You want me to think of something? Fine, I'll think of something. He tucked his hands into his robes and sauntered forward. Erda, Axis called, voice light but edged with venom. You still don't see how badly you erred. Because of you, several of our sons endured unspeakable pain. You were led astray. You were blinded. The Emperor's rage nearly spilled into the word chaos. Erda's face went dark. My will has always been free. No one swayed me. I saw through your ambitions. Facts prove I was right. Look what you turned our sons into, instruments of war. Axis's tone sharpened. He produced an image as casual as it was cruel. There are people who walk around with a ruler, measuring the length of others on the street, but they never use that ruler to measure themselves. He paused to let it land. Or perhaps some were sold out and keep counting the money for their masters. Those people are truly fools. Everyone froze for a moment, then turned to look at Erda. Her face was hard as stone. Axis's words, both explicit and implied, were a public mocking of her. To be measured on the street by a ruler and never measure oneself. To be sold out and still tally other people's coins, the accusation stung deep. Erda's eyes narrowed. Around them, the custodies tightened their ring. The Thunder Warriors, scattered and slaughtered, lay broken and still. Horus stood between fury and grief, his father's will an immovable mountain blocking the mother he had just found. The air hummed with tension as the trial of loyalty, love, and power reached its cruelest summit. Enough! A dangerous light flashed in Erda's eyes. She raised a hand and pointed at Axis. You know nothing, mortal. You have no right to speak here. Who do you think you are, daring to accuse me? If Macario, if the Emperor, or even her own children, the Gene Seed Primarchs, accused her, Erda could have borne it. But this man, even if the Emperor later recognized him as a Primarch, he was not her son. Everything Axis had said, both plainly and between the lines, painted her as a fool, someone who had been used. Am I wrong? What sort of mother would do that to her own sons? Axis asked. He spoke deliberately, keeping his words vague. Only the Emperor, Kasha, and Macario knew the exact truth. Even the two Primarchs and the custodians present did not. Still, the question pricked their curiosity. There had to be a reason for what Erda had done. What had she actually done? The custodians now realized the proceedings were beyond their place. They erected a sound-dampening barrier around the chamber and withdrew beyond it. The Emperor glanced meaningfully at Kasha, suspecting she had told Axis something. Kasha looked bewildered. She had guarded that secret fiercely. She had never spoken of it. Where had Axis learned the details? Macario's thoughts matched the Emperor's. and neither of them had intended to keep the truth from Axis forever. He would need to know in time. Axis would be vital to the future of the Imperium. Erda sniffed in disdain and turned her anger on the Emperor. You're making it sound simple to raise a Primarch. First one must go into the warp to find a lesser god, then fashion a vessel for it. To form that vessel, you need immortal genes, an extraordinarily powerful immortal. Among humans, besides me, there are other female immortals, even one in the Noctis Labyrinth on Mars. So after I left, did you go and find a replacement at once? Axis was personally modified by me, the Emperor said, but he is a naturally born human, not the product of some genetic experiment. No need for wild speculation. Axis had seen the chaos horrors and understood them. Understanding was the first defense. I did it for my children's good, Erda insisted. I did it to keep them from being controlled by that tyrant. Horus and Rogal Dorn, standing nearby, exchanged uneasy looks. The Primarchs were the Emperor's divine children, yet they had not remained at his side. An accident long ago had scattered them across the cosmos. The suggestion that that accident had something to do with their mother sank into them. Dorn felt nothing for the woman. His purpose was singular, to aid the Emperor in the Great Crusade. If his father commanded, he would not hesitate to draw his power weapon. Mother, why did you do this? Why did you scatter us? Horus demanded. Very perceptive, my children, Erda replied. From a few hints you can see the shape of it, but think, if you had stayed with your father, you would never have been free. Look at this brother. He has already become your father's tool. Did you ask those of us who lived through it how we felt? Axis shot back. Horus's childhood was not as pleasant as you imagine, and even so it was better than many of our brothers. Rogal Dorn nodded. Mortarion had been raised on a toxic world. Without their superhuman bodies, many would have perished. You survived. You are your mother's finest children. I believed you could look after yourselves. Presumptuous, Dorn growled. Mother, what you did was wrong, Horus said. Many of our brothers suffered terrible lives. Many were on the brink of death. Why didn't you try to speak with father? He did care for you. He would have struck you down long ago if he had not. So you scattered us across the universe out of fear? Axis asked coldly. You have no right to speak to me. If you say another word, I will kill you. Erda's hostility toward Axis, the Emperor's child by another woman, was naked. You dare? Axis replied. You were deceived and didn't even know it. You think yourself clever, but you have been a tool. Axis folded his arms and smiled wryly. Let's do a simple test. Tell me, great mother of the Primarchs, when you plotted to take the Primarchs, did you ever hear whispers in your ear? When you resisted the Emperor, did you ever have particular dreams? Erda's face went pale. Her fingers trembled. Memories she had tried to bury came rushing back. The occasional whispers in the laboratory, the hallucinations she had blamed on stress. What are you talking about? Her voice wavered for the first time. Macario noticed the change at once. The Emperor's gaze sharpened. Pain flickered across his face. This was his deepest fear. Confirmation that Erda had not acted wholly of her own will. He had wanted desperately to believe otherwise. Axis said, amusement gone. Was there always a voice telling you the Emperor would become a tyrant? That your sons were nothing but tools denied freedom? That you had to resist? He spread his hands, mocking. What a convenient intuition. Horus stared at his mother. Is he telling the truth? Erda's psychic power was immense, second only to the Emperor, Magnus, Macario, and Kasha. What force could sway her? A powerful human psyker, or something else? No, it was my own will, Erda snapped, but the conviction had gone from her voice. Axis's expression hardened. They love to play these tricks. They don't confront the Emperor directly. They turn to those closest to him. They make you feel righteous, Axis said, quiet and sharp. And you, proud mother, so easily became their puppet. You're talking nonsense. Erda's psychic aura began to flare, purple energy crackling at her fingertips. I am not being controlled by anyone. Father, there's something wrong, Axis started. At his words, the Emperor finally saw it, a corrupting, this chaotic force within his wife that he had failed to detect. He raised his hand, and a golden psychic barrier sprang up around Erda. Inside the shimmering field, bluish-purple tendrils of energy were ripped from her body, twisting and writhing like living things as they were forced out. No, this can't be. Erda staggered back, staring at the expelled energy with disbelief. Macario's expression sharpened further. He had sensed the taint now made visible. "Do you understand?" Axis's tone was grave. "Your so-called free will was contaminated from the start. You thought you were protecting your sons. In truth, you very nearly destroyed them." The Emperor's voice rang out, tired more than angry. "This is why I must bring the Primarchs back, why I must build the Imperium. Humanity has never been the master of the galaxy. Malevolent things wait for us to err, so they can enslave us. I fight for humanity, and my conscience is clear." Erda sank to her knees. Tears streamed down her face as decades of conviction and resentment revealed themselves to be a cruel lie. She had been seduced, unwillingly, by those dark whispers. "You should be confined to the dungeons of the Imperial Palace on Holy Terra, never to see the light again," Axis said. "That would be the greatest mercy." If the Emperor had not restrained him, Axis admitted inwardly, he would already have fired an energy projectile at her. 148. Emperor telling the truth about chaos, Project Think Tank. As soon as Axis found Erda, his chi detected something wrong in her body. Even a psyker of the Emperor's caliber had not seen it, but his chi could, a sliver of warp taint hidden inside Erda. It was tiny, but it sat there like a worm, ready to nudge her into making the wrong choice at a critical moment. Worse, there were Eternals within humanity who opposed the Emperor and had secretly worked with that influence. Scattering the gene seed Primarchs across the galaxy was not something Erda could have done alone. She had been, at best, a pawn. Once Axis sensed the chaos warp within Erda, he knew he could not let her slip away. This was an opportunity he couldn't afford to lose. Quietly, with his chi, he shoved Horus and guided his fall, so he landed right beside Erda. He wanted everything exposed. Only by facing the true nature of chaos could they hope to defend against it. Axis hoped, perhaps foolishly, that history could be altered, that the Horus heresy might be avoided. "Mother, were you used? This is warp power. Were you manipulated by some powerful psychers?" Horus blurted. Though he was a returned gene seed Primarch, Horus knew nothing of chaos. The Emperor had kept that secret. To him, the warp was merely a sea for travel. The monstrous truth of its denizens would only later be revealed to Russ and Magnus. "No!" Erda's eyes snapped open. Madness and despair flickered through them. "Even if I was influenced, my intent was not wrong. Look at the Empire now. Look at the worlds we've conquered. Do you truly care about human freedom?" She fixed the Emperor with a burning stare. "You enslave people in your name. You have been trapped by the spirits that feed on you, Erda." The Emperor said in a voice like iron, "This galaxy is darker than you imagine." Erda laughed, a shrill, tearing sound. "You say I was influenced. Name them. Tell your sons. You—" Her words broke into wild screams. The Emperor's body flared with a golden light as he pushed back with psychic force. The power overwhelmed Erda. A terrible high scream cut off and she passed out. If he had waited, she might have revealed too much, how he had once bargained with the Chaos Four, how the Primarchs had been seized through that pact, how he broke the bargain and kept the Gene Seed Primarchs for himself. For all his titles and power, the Emperor carried that secret closest to his chest. Only his old friend Macardo knew the truth in full. Even Erda had only guessed fragments. The Chaos had answered his slight with a curse. Half of his progeny would one day betray him and return to their true masters. "Mother," Horus cried, stepping between them. "Father, please, don't hurt her." "You will not be harmed further," the Emperor said. "She will be confined deep in the dungeons of Holy Terra until she recognizes her mistake." Axis stepped forward. "It's better if some things are made clear now. Rogald Dorn and Horus deserve some truth. If you hide everything, they will only guess wildly." Many tragedies in the galaxy had begun with silence and misunderstanding. Macardo nodded at Axis, and the Emperor relented. "You are right. We will tell more when we return to the palace on Terra. I will relate the full course of events." For the moment, he made practical orders. "Clear this place. Dispose of the Thunder Warrior bodies and secure Erda." The custodes moved like shadows. They gathered bodies, scrubbed the blood from the square, and bore away the unconscious Erda. Within moments, the plaza looked as if nothing had happened. The Emperor returned to the high platform and then used his power to erase the memory of the crowd. The people of Holy Terra would recall only that the Emperor had announced a joyous thing. "My daughter will soon be wed to the returned gene seed Primarch Axis," he proclaimed. "Axis is not my blood. He was found as a child and later modified on Holy Terra." Only then did Rogel Dorn and Horus realize Axis was not truly their brother by blood. To the citizenry, the announcement was strange but acceptable. The Emperor had explained it, and cheers rose again. But few present besides Axis felt like celebrating. The Emperor, Axis, and Kasha paraded the outer ring of the Imperial Grand Avenue, accepting the acclamations of thousands. Afterwards, they returned to the palace. The ceremony was concluded and recorded. Footage of the event would be distributed to the colonies, so every governor knew a Primarch had returned, and the Emperor's eldest daughter would soon be wed. Later, in the throne hall, the Emperor gathered his generals and lieutenants before him. "I had wanted to delay this," he said, "but today forces my hand. Humans are in far greater danger than you know. In the warp, there are ancient, malevolent presences that hunger for us. Their names are Khorne, Nurgle, Slaanesh, and Tzeentch." He clarified what they were. "They are not gods in the way you might think. They are life forms birthed by the negative passions of the warp: war, decay, excess, and scheming. They seek to consume and corrupt." "Father," Horus asked, alarmed, "if such things exist in the warp, is it dangerous for humans to travel through it?" "Very dangerous," the Emperor answered. "That is why I have taken precautions. The Gellar Field, the Psykers we sanction, the Navigator families I have provided, and the Astronomicon burning on Holy Terra, all these protect you when you voyage through the warp. If the Webway and our faster-than-light projects succeed, we may one day be free of it entirely." "So Mother sent us out under their influence?" Horus asked, voice tight. "You saw the Chaos Warp I extracted from your mother," the Emperor said. "She was enticed by those beings, but she was also used by factions among the Eternals who opposed my work. The Eternal community is not unified. A portion rejected my Gene Seed Primarch project and exploited Erda." He spoke broadly of the Golden Men, of a time when humanity's works were handed over to the Men of Iron and decadence followed, a time when humanity flirted dangerously with alien arts. The Emperor confessed his fear that, left unchecked, humanity could itself birth something like Slaanesh. "I created safeguards to protect you from warp erosion," he continued. "But the chaos already reached for you once after your birth. Magnus, who has the most powerful psychic presence among you, was the first to be targeted. He alerted me, and we took precautions. I have helped him break free from that interference. I returned to Terra to handle Axis, but I had not expected to encounter Erda." Rogel Dorn spoke next. "We must not be swayed by these beings. Implement stricter safeguards for Psykers." "I will not hate all Psykers for the sins of a few," Axis said. "They are part of humanity." "Nor should responsibility be shuffled away," Dorn replied. "Psykers can, through error or loss of control, kill innocents. We must organize and control them." Axis agreed. "Sanctioned Psykers are necessary for the Empire. Astropaths, warp navigators. We must gather them, finding those with potential, training them as sanctioned servants of the Imperium." Kasha added the plan she and Magnus had discussed on Prospero, to establish an organization, special ships to comb human worlds for Psykers, to bring them in, train them before they could harm others. Those who could not be helped might be sent to Prospero for study and containment. "That plan comes from Magnus," Axis said. "He has already contacted some of you." Rogel Dorn was wary. "My legion does not need an intellect library." The Emperor interposed. "Psykers are part of humanity. Whether they wield that power is not a crime, and among your brothers there are those with gifts. If the Primarchs learned the truth of their origins, all might possess psychic power, and of a caliber far beyond ordinary Psykers. Their souls are of the warp, potent beyond measure." "In that case," Axis said, "I support an intellect library. My legion already keeps one." "I support it as well," Horus said. The matter hung in the throne room like a promise and a warning. The Emperor had opened a door the galaxy could not thread back through. Chaos had been named. Plans had been set in motion. How those choices would shape the future remained to be seen. 149. Resistance to promoting Psykers was a stubborn, foul-smelling stone. Horus was not especially hostile to Psykers. His mother, sister, and father were all Psykers. He knew the truth of it. Psychers could, without meaning to, harm those around them, and the social impact could be grave, greater even than mutants or xenos in some cases. But to throw away their value because of that would be absurd. The Imperium functioned because of Psychers. Without them, warp travel itself would be impossible. The Space Marines' intellect library is vital, Axis said. They combine powerful psychic arts with the enhanced bodies of Space Marines. Their strength far outstrips ordinary Astartes. They perform special missions, shape the elements, even create localized time reversals, foresee future events, and see things clearly that others cannot. Kasha and I, for example, often work together using psychic teleportation to strike at Xenos. The importance of the intellect library was obvious. 10,000 years later, every chapter would have librarians for a reason. Still, some Geneseed Primarchs were profoundly averse to Psychers. The Black Templars lacked their own intellect library, while the Imperial Fists, the Mother Chapter, did not. Yet the Black Templars had become, in many eyes, the fierce inheritors of the Legion. As successors, they had even surpassed their Mother Chapter, and their chapter's size was peerless. Then we can convene a Primarch-level council and see how the others feel, whether they can accept Space Marine intellect libraries, Rogel Dorn suggested. In the present circumstances, Axis and the new eldest princess supported the plan. Horus backed it, the Emperor made no objection, and Micardo had not spoken. Dorn felt at a disadvantage. Only a meeting of Primarchs could settle it. Rogel Dorn expected Mortarion to side with him. "Stop arguing. There's no need for a Primarch-level meeting," the Emperor said, waving a hand. "I approve the intellect library plan. All legions shall cultivate intellect libraries." He had thought it through. Axis and Kasha were right. Intellect libraries significantly bolstered a legion's combat power. Several Geneseed Primarchs had already spoken to him privately. Magnus had proposed the plan. Lionel Johnson, Sanguinius, Chagatai Khan, and several others had expressed support. "Your command is supreme, Father," Rogel Dorn said on one knee. With the Emperor's word given, further argument was pointless. The Intellect Library program was proposed by Magnus. His legion will be responsible for the initial training. We will supply gene seed. Magnus will handle the rest, Axis added. How convenient. Unlike a time when acquiring a suitable librarian was a matter of waiting for a rare chance aboard the black ships, where a qualified candidate might not appear in 100 voyages, now Magnus on Prospero could handle selection, modification, and training directly. Prospero's numbers of psychers were unrivaled. They could run a one-stop service, pick candidates, train them, and send them to their legions. "I think that only applies to those with my gene seed in the Thousand Sons," Rogel Dorn countered. "If intellect libraries are necessary, each legion should cultivate its own. Prospero shouldn't just produce and modify them for everyone." Axis rolled his eyes. Dorn was a rock in a latrine, stubborn and reeking. Axis had met several Geneseed Primarchs, even the erased second Primarch, but Dorn's obstinacy rubbed him raw. "On that point, I stand with Dorn," Horus said. For many Geneseed Primarchs, the purity and identity of a legion mattered deeply. An externally produced librarian, even one sharing their gene seed, would find it hard to win unanimous acceptance among his battle brothers. The first cohort will be trained on Prospero. Once their training is complete, they will be sent to the legions. After that, further intellect libraries shall be cultivated by their respective legions, the Emperor decided. It was compromise. Magnus handled the initial centralized effort because other legions lacked the institutions and experience to train librarians, but in the long term, each legion would take responsibility. Axis and Horus exchanged looks and nodded. Rogel Dorn, too, assented. Let it be so. Have the Psychers send this decision to all Primarchs. If your legions already have Psychers or find powerful talents, you may send them to Prospero for cultivation, the Emperor ordered. "We obey, Great Emperor," the gathered Primarchs answered in unison. "Very well, you may disperse. Axis and Kasha's wedding will be held shortly. Horus and Dorn, after the ceremony, return to the Great Crusade as soon as possible. Axis, you will remain on Holy Terra to form your legion. Once your legion is formed, you will join the Great Crusade. And Axis, do not forget the task I gave you." "Yes, Father," they replied several times, and a murmur of more personal replies followed. "Yes, father-in-law." The Emperor, exhausted by the day's events and the duties yet to come, finally signaled rest. "I am tired. Leave me to it for a while," he said, weary. They bowed and departed the Imperial Hall. "Horus, Dorn, come with me. I have something to show you," Axis called to the two Primarchs as they emerged just outside the palace gate. The Emperor had instructed Axis to use Chi to bolster the two Geneseed Primarchs, and Axis wanted to take the opportunity to teach Dorn a lesson. "No interest," Rogal Dorn replied bluntly. There was nothing to be said between him and Axis. He would not accept any favors. Horus grinned. "What sort of gift is it?" he asked Axis. He had questions of his own. Someone had pushed him earlier, and Axis was a likely suspect. "Ha! Follow me!" Axis crowed, slipping an arm around each of the other Primarch's shoulders and heading for the palace basement. Horus chatted and laughed easily as Axis led them. Dorn struggled at first, then yielded to the force around him and allowed himself to be dragged along, his face flushing. "Dorn, are you all right? You look pale. Feeling faint?" Axis asked, feigning concern as they descended to the underground training arena. "Say what you want. Just say it," Dorn snapped, breaking free of Axis's arm. The man's strength was prodigious. "Nothing untoward. I thought Geneseed Primarchs should foster stronger bonds. Between men, a fight can settle many things, so let's spar," Axis said, stretching his wrists. Horus coughed. "Axis, this good thing, isn't it more than just a friendly bout? My Chi can enhance your physical qualities and increase your Primarch strength," Axis explained. "But first, a warm-up. Some drills. I won't bully you, Dorn. You and Horus can come at me together later." If Dorn refused to give face, Axis planned that his fists would teach him respect. The Emperor had permitted Axis to use Chi on them, but had not prescribed methods. A bruising followed by enhancement was within the bounds of instruction. "Not necessary for Horus," Dorn said coldly, stepping to the center of the arena in his golden plate. "If it is a fight you want, I will fight." "Very well," Axis said, dropping his courtesy. "I'll go easy on you. One hand behind my back, no armor for me. Now, you wear your armor, no power armor on me." "You're arrogant," Dorn snorted. "This is confidence," Axis replied. Then, with an even odder flourish, "Or we can add a condition. I'll fight with my hands behind my back and only use my feet. That will be enough." He smiled, too sure of himself, and the underground arena prepared to witness a bout between stubborn pride and reckless bravado. 150 kicked Dorn into doubting life. "I am also a barbarian." Axis had returned to his usual height of 2 meters and 1, a faint smile playing on his lips. He beckoned Rogal Dorn with one hand, then folded his arms behind his back. "Come at me with everything you've got. If you can even touch me once, I'll call it your win." "How's that?" Even Horus, standing nearby, frowned. This Axis was absurdly overconfident. Rogal Dorn wasn't a pushover. If they fought at full strength, with the power Axis had just shown, Dorn might well struggle. But to demand a fight with no power armor, to restrict himself to only using his feet, and to declare that a single touch would count as victory, this was humiliating. Dorn's face darkened at once. The opponent's strength was undeniable, even greater than Vulcan, the lord of the fire dragon, who had once been the strongest among the Primarchs. Dorn admitted he might not match Axis in raw power, but to be forced into a fight without armor and with only feet, this was arrogance. "Horus, Dorn, we are all Geneseed Primarchs of the Imperium. No conflict should break out among us. Calm down, both of you. Stop this." Horus stepped between them. "I've never had anything against Axis," Rogal Dorn snapped. "I oppose his intellect library plan, that's all. That's my complaint. I didn't tell him he had to take off his armor or fight with his feet." He made no effort to hide his annoyance. He'd been dragged here and then challenged. "That's my proposal," Axis said. "Come at me. I promise to go easy." "Humph, you talk like a barbarian," Dorn scoffed. There was something about Axis that reminded him of the Wolf King and of the golden-haired Lion King as well. "The environment I grew up in was like theirs. So sure, call me a barbarian," Axis said with a shrug. "I'm a barbarian. What can you do to me? Both of you enough." Horus pleaded. "Move aside. If he insists on fighting like this, don't blame me if he loses." Dorn shoved Horus aside and charged. Primarch's speed was terrifying. Dorn became a golden blur and unleashed a fist toward Axis. "Get out of the way! Axis!" Horus shouted. Dorn made no attempt to hold back. Fully powered armor and Primarch reflexes meant that blow could have killed a Geneseed Primarch without armor. but Dorn only struck a faint afterimage. Axis had moved behind him. When? Dorn spun back, creating distance, eyes narrowing. At the instant he threw the punch, Axis should have still been where he'd started. In a fraction of a second, he was behind him. Can't see? I'll slow down then, Axis said, his voice already an afterimage. He appeared in front of Dorn and sent him flying with a spinning kick. Dorn hit the ground and steadied himself on a hand. Axis was suddenly in front of him again, then sidekicked him clear across the arena. Rogal Dorn's power boots carved two scorched marks into the floor. Axis inverted above him like a phantom, and his feet became a blur of strikes. Dorn couldn't track the trajectory. He only felt blows to the face. Axis hadn't aimed elsewhere. The whole time he'd been attacking Dorn's face. Dorn's countenance swelled. He glared, but the arena was full of whirling afterimages. Axis's speed was beyond anything a gene seed Primarch should be able to achieve. Rogal Dorn roared and attacked. Each of his strikes had the force to break city walls. But Axis simply shifted, slid, and raised a leg with almost casual precision. Each dodge was timed to the millimeter, never letting Dorn's wind brush his clothes. Hands open the doors, feet do the fighting, Axis murmured in Dorn's ear. Dorn barely saw the movement, then a crushing force slammed into his lower back and sent him tumbling. Axis's soul stepped lightly on his back, using the leverage to spring into the air and land behind him. A boot like a battering ram struck Dorn's chest. Dorn grunted and crawled before he could pull himself up. Even with armor, he needed several seconds. Dorn's fury flared. He overloaded his power armor, speeding up until his fists became meteors. Axis leaned back a fraction, lifted a foot, and snapped it into Dorn's wrist joint like a viper. There was a crack as the servo systems jammed. Dorn's gauntlet froze in mid-swing. Heh, too slow, full of openings, Axis said, smiling. A golden boot filled Dorn's vision and then connected with a thunderous impact. The Imperial Fist Primarch flew back. The heel left a clear imprint across his chest plate. Axis flipped elegantly in midair, tapped Dorn's knee for a vault, and drifted back as if weightless. His style was lithe, refined, nothing like the raw savagery he'd displayed before. Horus's pupils tightened as he watched. Whenever Dorn prepared a counter, Axis's toes would land on the exact joint bearing the force, interrupting every offensive as if he'd predicted it. It wasn't a fight, it was systematic humiliation. Dorn's next blow tore the air, a strike that could pulverize adamantium and rattle Titan feet. Axis moved a half-inch, slid like a ghost. Dorn's wind only ruffled his hair. Axis chuckled, hands still clasped behind his back. Dorn changed tactics, sweeping with his other arm like a warhammer while engaging his thrusters to close in, trying to trap Axis. Axis hopped, planted his right foot on Dorn's sweeping wrist to somersault, and with his left leg, like a steel whip, lashed toward Dorn's head. The blow left a footprint dented in the side of Dorn's helmet. He staggered. Bastard! Dorn bellowed and fired his assault mode. Blue flames burst from his power pack as he became a golden comet, gauntlet generators flaring with electrical light, the kind of killing blow that could punch through Leman Russ's main armor. Axis only smiled and rose to meet the charge, bringing his right leg down like a battle axe. The instant heel met gauntlet, their knuckle guards split like a shattered web. Axis's foot pinned Dorn's bionic arm to the ground. The composite floor cracked in spokes, fissures running up to Horus's boots. Dorn panted. He had never faced an opponent like this. This wasn't combat, it was mockery. The gap in capability was obscene, the difference between Dorn and Axis like that between a gene seed Primarch and a space marine. What kind of monster was Axis? Could there really be such disparity among Primarchs? Horus was stunned too. He'd expected Axis to be formidable, but not this level of mastery. On Holy Terra, in the Imperial Palace, the Emperor and Mikado sat together with cups of coffee. With that kid's personality, he'll probably give Dorn a good beating, Mikado said. Are you sure it won't discourage him? All our gene seed Primarchs are proud, the Emperor replied. Sometimes pride needs humbling. Dorn has a bedrock of character. He'll recover. He sipped his coffee. Actually, that kid Axis might be even more arrogant. Perhaps someone should teach him a lesson. He certainly has the right to be proud. There's no one in the Imperium who can truly rein him in. Haha, Dorn's in for one. Back in the arena, Axis delivered the finishing sequence. He vaulted into the air into a handstand, his legs scissoring around Dorn's neck, and used the downward momentum to smash him headfirst into the floor. The impact shook Dorn to his core. The upper plate of his armor split, and he coughed up blood as he slumped, embedded in the ground. Axis's movements had been fluid the whole time. His hands remained folded behind his back. When the dust settled, he crouched next to Dorn and asked, "Can you still stand?" Dorn's face was a bloated, disfigured mess. He looked utterly humiliated. "Enough, Axis. You've gone too far." Horus strode up angrily and stood in front of him. This had not been a contest. It had been a crushing, deliberate trouncing. Axis smiled, laid a hand on Dorn, and channeled his life energy into healing the Primarch's wounds. In moments, Rogel Dorn's swollen face smoothed. He rose, raw pride still searing in his eyes but physically restored. Axis had spent decades refining his manipulation of chi, the life-bearing energy that flowed between body and spirit. He was expert at using it both to heal and to enhance. The wounds Rogel Dorn and Horus had seen only moments before were superficial. With a gene-seed Primarch's constitution, rest would have sufficed, but Axis Ki had already begun repairing them as Dorn slowly opened his eyes. "This isn't psychic power. What is this?" Horus asked from the side. Even as a Primarch, he could still tell the difference when something was truly psychic. "It's distinct from psychic power," Axis replied briefly. "It belongs to both the physical universe and the spirit plane. We call it chi." Information about chi had been tightly guarded by the Emperor. Aside from the Space Wolves, only a few, like the First Legion, the Fifth, and the Thousand Sons, had any inkling of its existence. Horus's surprise deepened. "So your chi can heal that well?" he said. "It can heal, yes," Axis answered, "but it is equally devastating when used for destruction. If you want proof, the footage of my battle in Zidon should make that plain." He spoke with casual mystery. The Emperor would now have to decide whether to show the other Primarchs the footage. Axis hoped it would not unnerve them too badly. Rogel Dorn rose to his feet. He had been humiliated in the fight. He needed to measure the gap between himself and the man before him. "How much power did you use just now?" he asked. "You want to know how strong I am?" Axis smiled. "I have several transformation modes." He listed them deliberately. A basic Super Saiyan-like transformation, stages corresponding to Super Saiyan 1, 2, and 3, a transcended Super Saiyan form, transcended stacked with Super Saiyan 2, muscle stimulation, and full muscle burst states, a full power, mastery of Super Saiyan 1 that is a refined state rather than its own transformation, and the Great Ape, an even more berserk form he had no intention of revealing. There was also a legendary Super Saiyan form, a hidden peak he refused to show. "When I first came out," Horus said, "you towered like us. Were you using some kind of growth application of chi?" "That was an application," Axis replied. "Chi can swell muscles and bones to increase height and mass. It boosts strength but usually decreases speed." Then, as if to prove it, he said, "Let me show you." Golden light erupted around him. His hair rose and blazed. The air crackled. Dorn's eyes narrowed. "This resembles your Legion's transformation. So it's inherited from you?" "Partly," Axis said. "Data on my gene seed suggested that, at low levels, the transformation increases strength by only 2 to 5 times, enough for brief bursts rivaling custodian strength. But I am not the same as my gene seed offspring. In this state, my strength increases by more than 50-fold. Their bodies cannot withstand the same amplification. I can." 50 times. The number hit like a physical blow. Even the composed Horus swore aloud. The human mind struggled to process it. A man ordinarily of mortal strength multiplied by 50 could deliver blows measured in tons, forces that would pulverize a space marine. "Of course, that's only the first form," Axis went on. "I have a muscle-stimulated state that trades some speed for more strength, and a full muscle burst that is similar. But that's not all." His chi flared higher. The palace shook. Lightning gathered. Citizens across Holy Terra dropped to their knees and prayed to the Emperor, convinced some cataclysm had begun. The Emperor and Micardo, who shared a private cup of coffee far above the plaza, exchanged wry smiles. Axis was about to flatten the pride of 2 Primarchs in one afternoon. "This form increases my strength 100-fold, Axis said, as his aura sharpened, blue arcs of lightning flickering around his golden hair. "It's the Super Saiyan 2 state. I've only just mastered it. My control is rough and noisy." 100 times, Rogal Dorn whispered, voice unsteady. The gulf between him and Axis was beyond comprehension. 100-fold multiplier. This was custodian-level power. And then some. The realization sank like cold iron. Is this your limit? Horus asked, voice low, a tremor under the words. This should rival the Father, our Emperor, right? Axis shook his head. No, this is not enough to rival the Emperor. The Emperor's power is far beyond what you imagine. Even this state cannot scratch the surface of his deepest strength. Only the transcended forms, stacked with Super Saiyan 2, could begin to contend. The words hit Horus harder than the numbers. He had spent 30 years under his father's command, fought beside him, been saved by him countless times. The Emperor had always seemed only somewhat stronger. Now Horus felt naive, betrayed. Had the Emperor been holding back all those years? Had the rescues been true rescues, or performances? The thought unbalanced him. Dorn was quieter, but his face grew darker. To learn that even a transformation amplifying power 100-fold was still beneath their father's reach made their roles and their ambitions suddenly tiny. You're in a hurry to leave, Axis called to the retreating Horus. I said I would help increase your strength. Chi can enhance physical constitution. Strengthening your bodies is a task the Emperor assigned me. Axis's tone softened. He'd watched Horus flinch. He knew how humiliation could unmoor a warrior. Lion and Russ have already been strengthened by my chi, he added. While I'm on Holy Terra, I'll strengthen the Emperor's physical constitution too. I may be able to bring back other Primarchs, one at a time, so I can strengthen them as well. Horus and Dorn exchanged looks. Dorn asked the practical question first. How do we cooperate? Horus, more blunt, asked what Dorn wouldn't. Can this chi be taught? Can we learn to use it ourselves? Axis's expression was patient. I tried long ago. This chi responds to me alone. I can use it on you. I can strengthen your bodies, but I cannot teach you to wield it. No one else in the universe can control chi the way I do. He allowed a moment's honesty. He wanted a loyal piece near Horus, someone who could watch the War Master's moves, but he would not cultivate that offspring on Holy Terra. And Dorn, Axis thought with a private, slightly amused pity, would never accept a cultivator at all. The Primarch's mind was closed to some things. Horus took a steadying breath. Do it, then. I want my strength increased. Axis nodded and began the work. He channeled his Super Saiyan chi, not the roaring, unstable aura of the legendary heights, but a calmer, balanced variant better suited to Terran physiology. Compared to the thunderous power of his transcended states, this Super Saiyan chi was peaceful, measured, ideal for strengthening without scarring. As the two Primarchs felt the chi settle into their muscles and bones, both men understood that the world had shifted again. 152. The True Emperor. My name is Neos. The True Emperor. My name is Neos. Golden Super Saiyan chi surged from Axis's body. He put his hands on the shoulders of the two Gene Seed Primarchs and slowly poured the energy into them. The moment his palms made contact, the dazzling golden chi flowed like a living thing. Horus and Rogal Dorn tensed at once. An unprecedentedly powerful force seeped into them and spread through every cell. Their bodies drank it like parched travelers finding water. Their cells greedily absorbed the energy, and the two men came alive. Relax and feel it, Axis said, the golden flames in his pupils flickering as his Super Saiyan chi continued to suffuse the Primarchs. Horus's pupils narrowed. He could see veins in his arms glowing gold with the energy coursing through them. His blood vessels, his pulse, his muscle fibers strengthened. His bone density increased in a way he could actually sense. A body already pushed to the peak of human potential was getting stronger still. The Gene Seed Primarch's forms had been enhanced by the Emperor with technology and warp science to the pinnacle of humanity. Their templates were derived from the Emperor himself. Physically, they matched the Emperor. The one area where the Emperor had surpassed them was psychic power. Now, a wholly new force had broken that ceiling, and even these near-godlike bodies had room to grow. Even that first day of augmentation brought noticeable changes. Horus looked at Axis with stunned admiration. No wonder the Emperor had chosen this man as a new Gene Seed Primarch. Axis truly had the qualifications. He accepted him with the solemnity of family. All right, come back at this time tomorrow, Axis said. To fuse the chi into your bodies properly, you both need to be beaten half to death by me." He wasn't joking. Axis had no intention of letting go of such excellent practice dummies. Though they couldn't really defeat him, they were perfect for his training. Besides, Axis wasn't being cruel for cruelty's sake. Exhausting their physical reserves completely enhanced their cells' ability to absorb the chi. He discovered this effect while strengthening his gene seed offspring. Hard, draining combat made subsequent chi assimilation far more efficient. Rogaldorn grumbled inwardly, but accepted it as tempering. Fighting a strong opponent made you stronger. Horus, for a moment, had all the goodwill he'd felt toward Axis vanish. This scoundrel just wanted to thrash him and Dorn for his own amusement. The next weeks were heaven and hell. Every morning, Axis dragged them to the training grounds and put them through brutal sessions. Screams echoed from the underground arena as two of the Emperor's greatest warriors felt fear and failure for the first time since their births. After a brief warm-up, Axis would use revitalizing life chi to heal their torn flesh, then flood them with Super Saiyan chi. Sometimes the after effect was blissful, the sensation of lying on a sunlit beach after hard work, or basking in the quiet chi of a forest, even a feeling like being returned to a mother's embrace. Their bodies grew continuously stronger, visibly so. In 2 months, their physical fitness rose by roughly 40%. Every facet of their physiology improved, and the two Primarchs became, if anything, more formidable. During this period, Axis also married Kasha. The Emperor, the two gene seed Primarchs, Chancellor Micardo, and several high imperial nobles attended the modest wedding banquet. For immortals, such rituals were mere formality. What mattered were the political and personal consequences. The Empire gained a grand princess, the Emperor gained a daughter, and all the Primarchs gained a sister. And the Empire had gained a new gene seed Primarch. To ordinary citizens, this was hardly shocking. Gene seed Primarchs returned every few years, and the people had grown used to it. Among the other Primarchs, however, news of Axis caused a stir. Some had already known of him: Lionel Johnson, Karl, Chagatai Khan, Leman Russ, and Magnus, but the Emperor had kept a strict secrecy. The rest of the Primarchs were surprised not by the return of a Primarch, but by Axis's origin. He was not the Emperor's blood nor a child of the Emperor. Axis was the rare success of surgical modification in childhood. That meant the Emperor had a method to convert ordinary beings into Primarchs, and that revelation rattled many. Horus, the 16th Legion Primarch, calmed the matter with a public statement. Axis was a unique, one-off case. No more like him would be made. Relieved, the other Primarchs sent their psychers to offer formal congratulations to Holy Terra. They welcomed Axis as a fellow Primarch and blessed Kasha, their new sister. Even the taciturn Mortarion sent sincere good wishes. In truth, the Primarchs had longed for a sibling figure. After 2 months of enhancement, Horus and Rogaldorn said their farewells to Axis, Kasha, and the Emperor, boarded their ships, and resumed the Great Crusade. With them gone, Axis moved to a more delicate task, strengthening the Emperor himself. The Emperor's body was already stronger than that of an ordinary Primarch, so Axis had to enter Super Saiyan full power. The son-in-law and father-in-law withdrew to a private chamber in the Imperial Palace. A flash of light surrounded the Emperor. His towering golden guise collapsed. The hulking 4-plus-meter giant became a middle-aged man about 1.9 meters tall. Surprised? The Emperor asked. "This is my true face, only Erda, Kasha, Micardo, and now you know it." He had parents. He had been born human. His gargantuan golden form had always been a psychic projection, a comforting mask to keep his Primarchs from feeling like their maker was a monster. This human frame was his most authentic appearance. "It is surprising," Axis admitted, "but you look far more approachable like this." In accounts told by the Sisters of Silence, after the Emperor first took the Golden Throne, he was not a shining giant, but a middle-aged man crying out in agony. The most powerful of the soulless could pierce his psychic veil and see him as he truly was. "The reason I maintained that towering image was to reassure the Primarchs," the Emperor said, "to make them feel they are not monsters I created." "I understand," Axis said. "When I appear in public, I keep myself over 3 meters tall too. A giant is more intimidating than an ordinary man." The Emperor smiled. "You have a sense of humor, young man. My true name is Neos. It was the name given to me at birth, my oldest name. You have married Kasha, you are family. You are entitled to know it. Other titles like Lord of Mankind or Emperor are aliases. He valued Axis highly, and so revealed a truth even many Primarchs did not know. Axis felt the Emperor draw closer, knowing someone's true face and name was intimacy the Primarchs might never enjoy. Father-in-law suits me, Axis said. By my customs, to call you Neos outright would be disrespectful. Very well. Are you ready? Any preparation necessary? The Emperor asked. No. Relax. Retract your psychic power and do not resist, Axis instructed. The Emperor nodded. He sat cross-legged and suppressed his psychic presence to a minimum. The two men pressed their palms together, and Axis began to pour his Super Saiyan power into him. 153. Almost drained dry, the Emperor's body evolved. Axis drew a deep breath and a surge of golden chi erupted from him. He pushed himself into Super Saiyan full power. His pupils gleamed gold, his hair rose like living flame, but his aura was tight and controlled, proof of his mastery over his power. We'll begin, Axis said, voice low. The moment his palms touched the Emperor's, the secret chamber was drowned in gold. This was no gentle infusion like strengthening a gene seed Primarch. It was a deluge. The Emperor's body devoured the Super Saiyan chi as if it were a bottomless pit. Axis watched, stunned, as the rate of absorption outpaced his expectations. Though the Emperor was born human, his physiology was far from ordinary. Astonishingly, the Emperor's skin took on a golden sheen, and his frame drank in the energy hungrily. Continue, the Emperor said, his voice younger, his muscles visibly reshaping. Old wounds and ancient corruption, star god rot from the Void Dragon, warped scars from millennia of wars, even damage from the Chaos Four gods, were being repaired one by one. The energy reshaped him. His body underwent earth-shattering changes. He felt better than he had in ages. Axis's chi, designed to strengthen gene seed Primarchs, was doing something unexpected. It was healing the Emperor's hidden injuries and enhancing his physical form. More astounding was what Axis perceived at the cellular level. Watching through his chi sense, he saw the Emperor's tissues rewriting themselves. The corrupted gene chains began to mend. The Emperor's DNA was rearranging toward a more perfected state. The speed of absorption was phenomenal. After only a few hours, Axis's reserve was nearly drained. He almost laughed in disbelief. Without even shifting out of full power, the portion of his power used would normally be enough to strengthen two Primarchs at once. But it wasn't nearly enough for the Emperor. Damn you, Huang Laohan, he thought. If you're not a god, I'll be the first to be crippled. I'm a legendary Super Saiyan, and you almost sucked me dry. Axis's body flared. Golden light burst outward, his hair rose higher, and crackling lightning licked the air. Fine, let's see how much you can take, he muttered and pushed himself into Super Saiyan 2. A normal Super Saiyan, even a Super Saiyan 3, would have been overwhelmed by the Emperor's absorption. Axis, being legendary, could continually generate chi. Axis, the Emperor said, voice steady, my physiology is unlike other Primarchs. If this is too much, tell me. Every cell of the Emperor's body was ravenous. Life-bearing energy transformed them into something like activated stellar particles, cells more alive than they had ever been. Don't worry, this is only Super Saiyan 2. If it's not enough later, I have Super Saiyan. And if that still won't do, I even have Super Saiyan stacked with Super Saiyan 2, Axis said with confidence. Don't underestimate a legendary Super Saiyan. My chi is endless. The Emperor frowned. Don't shift into the form stacked with Super Saiyan 2. It would spike your combat power, but not your total chi. That state is for battle. For this kind of chi transfer, Super Saiyan full power is actually best. The legendary form's aura was violent and unstable. The calmer, neutral chi of full power suited the task. Axis nodded and relented. Even without a formal transformation, his body still produced a continuous stream of chi. At last, the Emperor's absorption rate and Axis's output found a fragile balance. Hours slipped by, over a dozen, and Axis was soaked in sweat. The Emperor's body was like a bottomless universe, every cell a hungry black hole devouring the golden current. Axis sensed his constitution was pushing past ordinary physical laws. Your cells, they're evolving, he murmured. He could see the Emperor's gene chains reorganizing. Warp-corrupted segments were being healed by chi and then redesigned. The Emperor's entire genetic structure was advancing to a higher plane. Damn you, Huang Laohan. Axis thought, "You're the real protagonist. Your body is evolving." He watched bone density increase, muscle fibers reconfigure, skeletal structure optimize. Strength rose at an almost obscene rate. If the Emperor had been humanity's pinnacle before, he was now stepping into beyond human. "So that's it," the Emperor's voice was raw with wonder. "I always thought my body had reached human limits. I was wrong. Axis, my cells have been evolving toward a higher dimension since birth. I was born with a normal body, and over millennia, it adapted to my soul until it stagnated a few thousand years ago. No technology could push it further, until now. Your chi has started a new phase of evolution. It will take time, but the change is real." The improvements to his constitution would also boost his psychic power. Axis had given him something far greater than mere repairs. "Evolution doesn't happen overnight. Can we pause?" Axis coughed. His chi was gone, completely spent. "Ha ha! Using all your chi was good for you. Cells strengthen when challenged. Let's stop for today. Rest. Eat within 24 hours, recover to peak, and we'll continue," the Emperor said. He stretched, feeling reborn, full of vigor and vitality. Axis nodded and, as his power withdrew, realized something else. Exhausting his chi and waiting for it to recover actually strengthened it. This was a peculiar but effective method of cultivation. Only Huang Laohan could drain him this utterly. The Emperor's body was a pit that swallowed every drop. "Go ahead," the Emperor said. "I want to get used to this body." Axis turned to leave, but couldn't help one last glance. Psychic sight showed a brilliant golden aura around the Emperor, and it was still growing. Axis felt the chill of possibility. He might have pried open Pandora's box. What would a fortified Emperor bring to this universe? A Huang Laohan more terrifying than the original timeline might be emerging. Back at his residence, Axis gorged on the feast the Custodes had prepared, 500 servings. He finished them all, and then ordered another 1,000. His appetite had grown 4 or 5 times over. Even that barely satisfied him. He slept 12 hours straight to restore his energy. When he woke, he went to the underground training grounds and ran through warm-ups. Draining and then restoring his chi had, in fact, increased it slightly. Strengthening Huang Laohan's body was serving as a form of cultivation for Axis as well. The Emperor's abnormal physiology no longer felt like a handicap. For a Saiyan, it was an exciting challenge. He had someone worthy of competition. Bullying cannon fodder would have grown dull. Axis settled into a strict routine, 10 hours a day strengthening the Emperor, then 24 hours of rest to recover chi and stamina. In between, he inspected his gene seed offspring. A scouting craft sent to probe the space Necrons had returned. Axis did not unseal the time Necron to forge a super machine spirit. Too many complications on Holy Terra, and there was no rush. Matter and the space wolves aboard the ship, once back on Holy Terra, received new gene seed implants and became Axis's gene seed offspring, each gaining a weakened version of the Super Saiyan transformation. Matter, already a powerful psyker, found his psychic might magnified when he transformed. It was now terrifying in scale. Yet he still could not match Kasha. Kasha's body and soul were also being fed by chi. She had even surpassed Mikado, the Imperial Regent. In the Empire, Kasha had become the third most powerful psyker, only behind the Emperor and Magnus. While the Emperor was being strengthened, Axis's own power was rising as well. Burning through all his ki each day and rebuilding it again was the perfect regimen for a Saiyan. As the Emperor grew stronger, Axis did too. In the first year, the Emperor drained Axis's ki completely, and Axis needed 24 hours to recover. By the second year, Axis could hold on to a little ki even as the Emperor absorbed more. After resting, he could even give Kasha a boost. By the third year, his ki capacity had roughly doubled, and the Emperor's daily absorption had more than doubled as well. Now Axis only needed a meal and 7 or 8 hours sleep for his ki to recover. His body was adapting to the rapid consumption. Besides using ki to strengthen Kasha, Axis even found time to improve his gene seed offspring. The Emperor, however, said, "Your gene seed offspring can be strengthened later when you have time. Help me with the Custodes first." So, beginning in the 4th year, Axis began spending several hours a day strengthening the Custodes. Even Mikado came forward to receive Axis's Kai. By the 5th year, Axis's Kai had increased by about 50%, and his Super Saiyan 2 training had reached its limit. Under the Emperor's orders, the Mars Mechanicum built a gravity chamber of roughly 300 times normal gravity for Axis deep within the Imperial Palace on Holy Terra. When it was finished, Axis copied all the data to the Morning Star and had an identical chamber installed aboard his flagship. Future training was important. By the 6th year, the Emperor's physical evolution had reached a critical point. His daily ki consumption was now more than 3 times what it had been in the first year. Originally, the Emperor had planned to remain on Holy Terra only half a year before returning to command the Great Crusade, but Axis's arrival had changed that. The Emperor's body needed time to evolve, so he stayed on Holy Terra and handed command of the Crusade over to Horus early. In the 7th year, the first batch of Axis's gene seed recruits had been fully modified, and the Legion's headcount finally exceeded 30,000. From then on, a fresh 30,000 recruits would join Axis's ranks every year until the 10th year. When the force would reach 100,000, a typical Astartes modification usually required 6 to 10 years. By the 8th year, the second Primarch Khorne returned to Holy Terra. Axis had rescued him, and after decades of rebuilding, Khorne had expanded his legion past 100,000 men and officially rejoined the Great Crusade. They exchanged cordial words, and Axis even used his ki to strengthen the second Primarch. What a miraculous power! Khorne breathed after receiving Axis's boost. I thought Father was hindered by something, but he was strengthening himself with this power all along. No wonder Horus, Leman Russ, and Lionel Johnson advanced so quickly. Were they receiving this ki as well? Had I had this body against the Raiden back then, I wouldn't have been ambushed. It won't be long before I join the Great Crusade, Axis said. My legion will be established in at most 3 years. The first recruits had officially enlisted, and his legion already numbered over 35,000. For the next 3 years, 30,000 new recruits would join each year until 100,000 were gathered. From that point, the Emperor would leave the legion's further development to Axis and intervene no more. Axis would also need to find a suitable homeworld during the Crusade. So Father will return to lead us in battle in about 3 years? Khorne asked, his eyes bright. It should be around then. It might be sooner. It might be later. The Emperor's at a critical point. How is the Great Crusade going under Horus? Axis asked. Horus was effectively serving as War Master in all but name. The Emperor had not officially appointed one, but he already exuded the bearing of a leader, and many Primarchs trusted him with command. Horus has leadership talent, and many Primarchs are willing to follow him, Khorne replied, then sighed. But there's one exception. Let me guess. The Lion? Axis said. The First Legion simply doesn't obey Horus. In great battles, they cooperate, but they ignore smaller orders. But it's not our business. Khorne shrugged. Axis kept his silence. According to the old timeline, Lionel Johnson should still have been fighting to the death with the Raiden, but Axis's arrival had resolved that conflict earlier. That left an irreconcilable rivalry. Lionel Johnson was the first Primarch by lineage, the eldest brother of all the Primarchs. But Horus claimed primacy because he returned first and had been entrusted with command. Both wanted to be the leader. It seemed Huang Laohan would have to get involved and settle it soon. By the way, Khorne added, both Lionel Johnson and Horus are recruiting supporters. Both will probably try to win you over. Think carefully once you join the Great Crusade. That's not good. Have any Primarchs openly declared for either side? Axis asked. Not openly, but Horus has the advantage. Sanguinius and Mortarion have an unbreakable bond with him. They will follow Horus. Magnus, Jagatai Khan, Fulgrim, Ferris Manus, Perturabo, Leman Russ, Vulcan, Corvus Corax, Guilliman, and I all have good relations with Horus. It was an almost one-sided situation. Lionel Johnson had virtually no backers. Only Rogel Dorn and Lorgar remained neutral. Dorn's character meant he prioritized the Imperium and the Emperor and cared little for such contests. Lorgar was entirely preoccupied with preaching the Emperor's achievements. For the past 7 years, the Emperor had stayed on Holy Terra. Lorgar's progress in the Crusade lagged far behind. This is complicated, Axis said. Don't worry, I won't take sides. Was it really necessary to choose? Horus seemed a safe bet, but Lionel Johnson's pride in being the first Primarch made him unwilling to cede his birthright. Karl's warning seemed designed less to influence Axis and more to remind him to report back to the Emperor. At that time, only Axis and Micardo could see the Emperor. Even his daughter Kasha could not. The Emperor consumed enormous amounts of Axis's ki, but he also needed time to assimilate it. For 8 years he had remained in that secret chamber, entrusting affairs to Micardo and Horus. They chatted a while longer, then Karl took his leave. Axis returned home and told Kasha everything. Scions were warriors through and through, not politically minded. If Axis hadn't been a transmigrator with some sense, he might have missed Karl's subtext entirely. Kasha sighed. "Handle it simply," she said. "Don't get involved." "So I don't tell the Emperor?" Axis asked. "Tell him what? Your job is to build your legion and use your ki to strengthen the Emperor. The Emperor has delegated political power to Micardo and military authority to Horus. If Lionel Johnson refuses orders, that's his fault. Micardo will report everything to Father. You don't need to interfere." Her meaning was clear. The Emperor had already selected a de facto successor. Lionel Johnson's stubbornness was pointless. Axis nodded and accepted it. In the 9th year, the Imperial Expeditionary Fleet discovered another Primarch. The Emperor left Holy Terra for half a year to receive Conrad Kurz, Primarch of the 8th Legion, and the Night Lords were officially formed. Nostramo was declared their homeworld. The Emperor's brief emergence also served to mediate the Primarch dispute. He called Lionel Johnson and Horus together, sharply admonished them both, told Horus to respect his brothers, and reminded Lionel Johnson that as the eldest, he must set an example and obey command. The leadership question quieted for the moment, but in every Primarch's mind, the Emperor's true chosen successor now looked to be Horus. Lionel Johnson could feel the sting of that. He thought back to the mysterious figure who'd met him during the Zidane War and wondered whether he could ever be War Master without support. To make matters worse, Horus had also been strengthened by Axis's ki and now outpaced him again. The Emperor also sent an envoy to Colchis to demand Lorgar carry out his crusade orders without delay. Having settled those matters, he returned to Holy Terra to receive more of Axis's ki. Axis and the Emperor estimated it would take another 1 to 2 years to finish the purification work. Time moved quickly. 10 years had passed. In the 10th year, Axis completed the strengthening of the Custodes' 10,000-man regiment, improving their physical qualities by roughly 20 to 30%. Axis's legion officially exceeded 100,000 troops. The Golden Legion had reached full legion strength. That same year, the Emperor's evolution reached its climax. His body had completed its super-evolution. In the 11th year, in the Imperial Palace's secret chamber on Holy Terra, boom. The chamber shook violently. The Emperor's body rose, golden energy forming a brilliant halo about him. His hair lifted as if moved by no wind, and golden patterns spread over his skin. He opened his eyes, and twin beams of gold shot from his pupils. An unprecedented psychic surge burst from his form. The power he now unleashed was greater than anyone had seen. "I feel excellent, Axis. My physical qualities have increased at least 3-fold," the Emperor said, standing before Axis. Over a decade, his body had absorbed Axis's ki and evolved to an extraordinary degree. There was still a gap between them. Axis remained the prodigy, and his own progress across 10 years had been massive. "Thank you, Axis. You've not only healed my old wounds, but made my body evolve," the Emperor added. "You're welcome. This has been training for me as well," Axis replied. "Axis, your strength must have risen quite a bit too," the Emperor observed. This boy, he felt, might have achieved a whole new transformation. Axis's potential seemed limitless. 155. Super Saiyan 3 Emperor Fall. Ha ha ha! You guessed right. I've already mastered a new Super Saiyan form, Super Saiyan 3. It's 400 times my base strength. Father-in-law, when are we going to fight again? Axis laughed. Axis had reached Super Saiyan 3. Son Goku had spent 7 years in the underworld exploring and trying to understand the form without any clear breakthrough, but Axis's training conditions had been far superior. He'd had a gravity chamber, a retinue of golden corncobs, gene seed Primarchs as sparring partners, and the Emperor himself pushing him. Over the past 10 years, besides strengthening the Custodes with chi energy, Axis had regularly challenged thousands of Custodes one-on-one, under the pretense of honing their skills. And each time, the Emperor would push Axis to exhaustion, forcing him to recover and climb again from zero, driving the Saiyan's body to its limits. Axis also possessed the Super Saiyan aptitude and had been modified by the Emperor with things like a biological furnace, a super heart, and an enhanced brain. With those advantages, if he hadn't grasped Super Saiyan 3 after 10 years, he might as well have banged his head against a block of tofu. He had first touched the Super Saiyan 3 realm in the training room a year ago and had spent the last year stabilizing it. The form multiplied his strength by 400, 4 times Super Saiyan 2, but it was an extreme drain on stamina. Even as a legendary Super Saiyan, Axis couldn't sustain it long in battle. From Super Saiyan 3 onward, he would have to make progress on his own. Son Goku's methods could no longer carry him. Forget it. A real fight between us would cause serious problems. I need to return to the Great Crusade, the Emperor said, shaking his head. The campaign had already been delayed for 10 years because of the training, and he had to get back to the front as soon as possible. More than that, Axis's infusion of chi had revealed something troubling to him. Father-in-law, what's wrong? You look like something's bothering you, Axis said, noticing a shadow cross the Emperor's features. The Emperor fell silent at Axis's words and finally sighed. Axis, if the day ever comes when you must be my enemy or even completely destroy me, could you do it? The question stunned Axis. If you mean sparring, I'd love it, absolutely, but I won't kill you. As you said before, you're Kasha's father and I'm Kasha's husband. We're family. I will not strike you, Axis said firmly. He wondered what the Emperor was doing, testing him for corruption by chaos, or whether he might one day turn on humanity or the Emperor. Axis thought of chaos and the 4 gods and instantly rejected the idea. He had no desire to join such abominations. Axis, I want to see your new transformation, the Emperor said. All right, Axis replied, but Super Saiyan 3's aura is extremely powerful. We should reinforce this place. Don't worry, my psychic power can isolate space and time here now. Transform. No matter how strong your aura, it won't escape, the Emperor said, his eyes flashing with golden light. He cast a barrier around the hidden underground chamber, an absolute defense. The Emperor's psychic power barrier had the strongest isolation properties. It even sequestered the surrounding space. Not a trace of Axis's aura would leak out. Axis nodded, drew a breath, and a golden energy erupted from him. His black hair snapped upright and golden. Lightning crackled around him. Super Saiyan 2. But he didn't stop there. Ha! With a low roar, Axis pushed his power further. The golden storm swept the chamber. His hair rapidly lengthened, flowing to his waist. His eyebrows vanished. His brow grew pronounced. His pupils shone with a cold, razor-bright light. His gaze turned fierce enough that any mortal who met it would be rooted in terror. Violent power filled the chamber. If not for the Emperor's barrier, terror itself would have trembled. This is Super Saiyan 3. Axis's voice deepened into a powerful rumble. Lightning crackled denser than in Super Saiyan 2. The energy storm threatened to rend space. He clenched his fists and felt the surge, 400 times his base. A terrifying power, capable of obliterating a supergiant star, not by a focused core ignition, but by sheer explosive force. The Emperor watched silently as the golden barrier contained the raging power. His gaze was deep, contemplative. Father-in-law, what do you think? Axis grinned, eyes gleaming with battle lust. Want to try it out now? No, never mind. The Emperor shook his head. Axis, your strength has only grown. There are things I should tell you, but you mustn't speak of our conversation to anyone, neither the Gene Seed Primarchs, nor Kasha, nor Mikado. Axis nodded, then dropped the Super Saiyan 3 form. Axis, my question earlier wasn't a test. It was a prophecy. I saw the future, the Emperor said, breathing deeply. Prophecy, Axis frowned. What future did you see? I will fall. The Emperor's voice was laden with helplessness. Fall? Father-in-law, are you serious? You'll fall? Axis's pupils tightened in disbelief. If the Emperor were to fall, which of the Chaos Four would dare claim him? He'd be their equal. Axis felt a nasty thought surface. Could the Emperor be an avatar of the Dark King? In the latest myths, the Dark King was more terrifying even than the Chaos Four, an entity that could consume the universe. If certain conditions are met, I will become something more terrible than the 4 gods. Humanity will be utterly hopeless then. Do you know the ancient Eldar myths? The Emperor asked. I know. Asurion, the Phoenix King, the Eldar's gods. Teacher Micardo taught me some of those stories, Axis answered. Slaanesh was born from the Eldar's fall. At its birth, over 99% of the Eldar had their souls devoured. Only 3 Eldar gods survived. One fragmented into innumerable pieces, one became a prisoner, and one hid forever in the webway. We humans are weaker than the Eldar in terms of psychic power, but we are far more numerous, the Emperor said. You mean our race could birth a new chaos god? Axis asked. Worse, I am the monster born from humanity. The Dark King slumbers within me. When the Dark King is born, every human soul will be devoured the instant it manifests. The human race will be annihilated the moment of its birth, the Emperor said. Axis's infusion of chi had vastly strengthened the Emperor's body and increased his psychic power, allowing him a clearer vision of that future. The Emperor described what would happen. He would become a living corpse, cling to existence upon the Golden Throne, enduring unspeakable torment in order to buy time. When his last shred of humanity, his last love for mankind, his last fragment of personality was gone, the Dark King would rise, and no life would remain. Axis, the chi energy you gave me could have strengthened my body tenfold, but I chose only to strengthen it threefold. Do you know why? The Emperor asked. Only a fraction of the chi had been used to fortify his body. The rest he stored as life energy. That stored chi would be decisive. Axis shook his head. What did you see then? I intend to preserve my strength for that inevitable future. Your chi can delay the Dark King's birth. In the despairing future I saw, you are the only hope. I will accept that cruel fate. I will sit upon the Golden Throne and buy you time, the Emperor said, placing his hands on Axis's shoulders. You're going to sit on the Golden Throne? Axis blurted, stunned. Wait, what do you mean you have to sit on the Golden Throne? Axis asked, bewildered. Did the future you saw show you sitting on it? The Emperor gave a wry, tired smile. Yes, I saw myself seated on the Golden Throne, mummified, broken. If that's so, why don't you just not sit on it? Axis pressed. If only it were that simple, the Emperor said softly. Foresight through psychers is rarely alterable, and what I saw did not stop there. Beyond that image was a farther future of absolute darkness and despair. I saw at least half of the gene seed Primarchs turn against me. Axis's eyes widened. So you have to sit on the throne no matter what. It appears so. The throne is tied to the Webway Project and to the destiny of humanity itself. Destroying it is not a clean solution. It would trigger a catastrophe far worse than the one it delays. The Emperor's voice was heavy with regret. If I take the throne, the Dark King will not be born for another 10,000 years. If I refuse it, the Dark King is born in mere centuries. Axis shook his head. But couldn't we just destroy the Golden Throne now and avoid all of this? If the Great Heresy happens, why not stop it before it starts? Keep Magic Pony from blowing up the Webway. Watch Horus, remove Erebus and the others. Fix the causes. If it were that simple, I would have done it already, the Emperor said. The throne is bound to the Webway work and to the long arc of humanity. Worse, the Dark King is unique, though its final birth is in the future. Once it exists, it is present in all time like Slaanesh. It has already meddled with our past in subtle ways. It was woven into events from the earliest days. If I stray from the path that allows its eventual birth in its greatest form, it will consume me. It will erase me and erupt into the galaxy. I must take the pain now to buy us time. Axis clenched his fists, resolve hardening. Then I will defeat the Dark King one day. I'll save you. If one form of power isn't enough, I'll master the next. I'll push beyond whatever limits there are. The Emperor smiled faintly, relief touching his features. That conviction is important. In the futures I have seen, you stand by my side. You will give others the strength to hold fast even when half of the Primarchs fall. He paused, then continued with cold clarity. In one vision I could not deny. I saw 9 blurry figures, traitors I could not identify. There was, however, one I could see clearly. A man consumed by fury and bloodlust, with nails driven into his head. Behind him were the banners of the 12th Legion, warhounds. He is the 12th Gene Seed Primarch, a Primarch I have not yet found. Axis felt his stomach drop. Angron? The Emperor nodded. Yes, he is the one who will betray me and unleash untold slaughter. Micardo sent me intelligence barely 2 weeks ago, a suspected Primarch's presence on a newly encountered Imperial world. I believe this is him. So you want me to go there? Axis asked. Yes. The Emperor's voice went from regret to iron. I intend for you to eliminate him before he can become what I saw. This Primarch is a failure in every sense, broken by slavery and branded with the butcher's nails. Even if he did not betray me, his nature is such that he would have slaughtered my custodians at our first meeting. The fate I saw is absolute and terrible. Can we try another way? Axis asked. Maybe we could prevent his fall instead of killing him. Perhaps removing him causes the betrayal you saw. You underestimate the fixity of psychic vision, the Emperor said. I have tried to change the future before. My father's death, the Void Dragon incident, the Iron Men rebellion, the twists of the Primarchs, and every attempt failed. Fate, as glimpsed by seers, is a harsh tutor. Axis remembered when the Emperor had sent him to eliminate the second Primarch when he was controlled by the Raiden. That had been an act born of the same grim logic. What about the 12th Legion? Axis asked. Will you wipe them out too? They are not at fault, the Emperor replied. They are loyal space marines. I will give them a chance. I will gather the 12th Legion and replace their gene seed. You will become their Primarch. They will become your sons. Axis's mind raced. The 12th must number well over 100,000 by now. My legion would swell overnight. Yes, unless there is no other option, I do not intend to annihilate those who have served faithfully, but the necessary reconditioning and gene seed replacement will be carried out. The Emperor's faith in him steadied Axis. In the future, I saw you at my side, and your gene seed offspring were steadfast. As long as you stand with me, even the betrayal of half the Primarchs can be endured. Axis straightened. I understand. I'll prepare to leave immediately. They left the training chamber together. Orders were set in motion at once. Gather the 12th Legion, prepare ships, and send Axis to the newly discovered world. The Emperor's face was set with the terrible calculus of someone who must accept a personal torment to keep a greater evil at bay. Axis left burning with determination, both to prevent the Great Heresy and to swear he would one day end the Dark King for good. Speculation about a rebellious Primarch when the Emperor learned of the Second Empire. The conversation between Axis and the Emperor was not something to be shared. Even Micardo, the man closest to him, would be kept in the dark. The matter of the Dark King was simply too cruel, too terrifying. If fate could not be altered and the final strand of the plot were to unwind, humanity would step by step sink into the deepest abyss of despair. The Emperor imagined himself splitting, becoming a constellation of dark, negative personalities, neither man nor ghost. From that despair, bathed in the blood of mankind, the Dark King would be born. He could not accept that. That was why the Emperor chose to keep 80% of Axis's chi within his own body. This vital energy, suffused with extraordinary life force, would help him resist the torment of the Golden Throne. After ascending the throne, his soul would dwell within the warp and feed off humanity's hope day and night, building his psychic strength. According to his estimate, in 10,000 years his power would rival the Chaos Gods. He would be able to forge a Daemon Prince, perhaps even great daemons and whole daemon legions. He would transmute his psychic power into a holy attribute, delaying the birth of the Dark King and buying time for Axis and for humanity. On the orders that followed, the 12th Legion, the Warhounds, mobilized at once. They dared not delay. Within hours, they were assembling their fleet to depart for Holy Terra. The Warhounds had been a stalwart force throughout the Great Crusade, disciplined, effective, and honorable. They should not have degenerated into the bloodthirsty monsters they became under Angron's influence, nor should their captains have vanished inexplicably or been driven mad by the butcher's nails. The general descent into carnage could not be fully reversed, but the Emperor still hoped to alter as much as he could of the smaller currents. Micardo and Kasha were stunned when the Emperor recalled the 12th Legion, but they obeyed without question. The Warhounds would arrive at Holy Terra in 3 months. During that interval, the Emperor summoned Micardo, Kasha, and Axis to his presence. "Old friend," he said to Micardo, "you must be wondering why I recalled the 12th. "A little," Micardo admitted, "but you are the Emperor. Whatever you decide, I will stand with you. Still, may I know the reason? Of course, the Emperor said. You are my most trusted friend. This time Axis used his chi to reinforce my body. My strength more than tripled, and my psychic power has grown markedly. Because of that, I saw something of the future. Glimpses of the future? Mikardo's surprise showed. When they were alone, he called the Emperor by his true name, Nyos. In company, he still used titles out of respect. What did you see? I saw a betrayal, the Emperor said. The Primarch of the 12th Legion, our 12th Gene Seed Primarch, he will betray me. Mikardo's face went pale. What? Are you certain he will turn traitor? Yes, don't reject it. Let me show you. The Emperor's eyes flared with golden light. He reached out with his mind and linked Mikardo, Kasha, and Axis to his vision, projecting slices of the future into their minds. They saw a flagship in flames. Angron roared, raised his axe, and charged the Emperor, hacking down a custodian in the melee. The Emperor's psychic might forced him back, returning him to his legion, but Angron refused to lead them. He slaughtered company captains who tried to restrain him until Khorne appeared, searing butcher's nails into his own skull to win Angron's trust. After that, the legion erupted into a whirlwind of blood. Angron demanded that his units complete conquests in 31 hours, a single day on the planet where he'd learned to fight with his gladiator brothers. If a company failed, he enacted the decimation. 1 in 10 would be executed, and his own brothers would tear the doomed soldier apart. His will became a red tide across the galaxy. Wherever the 12th passed, rivers ran with blood and mountains grew from corpses. This is brutality beyond measure, Kasha said. Mikardo nodded grimly. Even among the Space Marines, excesses occurred. There were dark chapters even in other legions, but this was killing for killing's sake. He feeds on humanity's negative emotions, the Emperor explained. The butcher's nails and his ability to consume despair warped him. He should have been a noble warrior, like the knights of old on Holy Terra. But the nails and that hunger turned him into a slaughterer. Is this Mother's fault? Kasha asked. If he had grown up on Holy Terra. Yes, Angron suffered most from what your mother did, the Emperor said. Had he not been driven by the nails to awaken that appetite for negative emotion, he would not have become this monster. Mikardo frowned. Is that why you want to eradicate him? If it were merely excesses in war, we could correct it. Killing soldiers, even civilians, is punishable, but not outright treason. Many Space Marines have dark secrets. Not every slaughter marks a traitor. The Emperor's gaze hardened. If it were only that, I would not have resolved to wipe him out. I saw more. His eyes flashed gold again. The final vision showed Angron standing with other Primarchs, axes raised, roaring at the Emperor, then the great heresy unfolding. 10,000 years on, Angron was unrecognizable, utterly corrupted by chaos, his body and soul a daemon prince, crowned in the blood-red light of Khorne. He's been corrupted by chaos, Kasha whispered. Mikardo's expression turned stony. The Emperor's earliest fears when he shaped the Gene Seed Primarchs were coming true. The crimson aura that consumed Angron belonged to Khorne, the oldest and fiercest of the Chaos Gods. In the vision, the Emperor could only clearly name Angron among the traitors. Half of the Primarchs will betray, the Emperor said. I can't identify them all yet, but I know this, the great heresy will happen. Mikardo's mind raced. Half the Primarchs? Then why was Axis here at his side? By probability, a 50% chance would have placed Axis in danger of being among the traitors. In that rebellion, I saw a traitor, the Emperor said, but I also saw a loyal Primarch. That loyal one is Axis. That is why he stands with me now. That explanation silenced Mikardo's doubts. No wonder Axis was present. Had Axis not strengthened the Emperor would never have glimpsed the heresy. Perhaps, through those visions, the future's course could still be nudged. Mikardo, ever pragmatic, spoke then. Among the Primarchs, some temperaments are dangerous. There are a few I would watch closely. Tell me, the Emperor urged. He valued his old friend's judgment. Angron is certain, Mikardo said. Beyond him, I suspect Mortarion. His upbringing was harsh. Perturabo of the Fourth has deep flaws tied to his background. And Sanguinius of the Ninth and Lionel Johnson guard them too. Sanguinius and Lionel Johnson named as possible traitors? Axis blinked. The two were among the most revered, loyal of all the Primarchs. One even gave his life fighting in the heresy. L. Johnson was famed for his unwavering devotion. Sanguinius and the lion are angels, Axis began uneasy. Even angels can fall, the Emperor said. Sanguinius's sons, for example, have a terrible vampiric quality. When we created Sanguinius and Lionel Johnson, we used special materials. They are true archangels. He explained what he had long known. The gene seed Primarchs were, in a sense, minor gods. They did not appear from nothing. They were born of fragments of ancient human deities. Guilliman carried pieces of Roman myth, Leman Russ bore shards of Norse gods, Angron was steeped in the spirits of war. Sanguinius and L. Johnson were shaped from the archetype of the archangel, hence the names blood angels and dark angels, and the extreme, sometimes contradictory, natures of those two Primarchs. Sanguinius could be gentle and noble at one moment, ferocious and bloodthirsty in battle the next. L. Johnson could be a stern, cold executor when duty demanded it. Axis muttered, "Could it be because of the Second Empire?" The Emperor's eyes narrowed. The mention of the Second Empire tugged at his mind. Through his psychic sight, he traced that period and reviewed it. When the three Primarchs, Sanguinius, Guilliman, and Lionel Johnson, had believed him dead, they had founded a Second Empire. Sanguinius took the throne as its emperor, Guilliman acted as regent wielding real power, and Lionel Johnson was appointed war master. They made Macragge the capital and even erected an Astronomicon-like beacon. It had been an act of betrayal in form, but in motive, it had been a response to the collapse around them, and a defense against other traitors. In that sense, the three had not turned entirely from their loyalty. Would that Second Empire, born in the chaos of the heresy, become an independent power after the flames died? The question hung in the Emperor's mind like a shadow. 158. Guilliman, the supreme surveillance target, departs for Nuceria. From his visions of the future, the Emperor had gleaned fragments about the Second Empire, but not the motives that birthed it, nor the full scale of the great heresy to come. If those visions were true, the three men at its heart had likely founded that Second Empire in utter despair, perhaps after his death and the collapse of humanity. Their deeds would be treachery, but born of intentions that, at least at first, had been honorable. They deserved observation more than immediate condemnation. For now, provisionally list those two as surveillance targets and include Guilliman as well, the Emperor said after a long pause. Forming a Second Empire was a betrayal, even if the intent had not been base. It warranted watching. Although Sanguinius stood as the visible leader of that rebellion, the true political core and the territory that mattered were Guilliman's Ultramar, 500 worlds of tremendous productive and military strength. The Emperor could not help but wonder why Guilliman had not taken the crown himself. Had he placed Sanguinius forward as a figurehead or a shield? And why would Lionel Johnson become entangled with Guilliman? The patterns intrigued him. Micardo bowed slightly. Guilliman was one of the few Primarchs with a civil mind. Unlike many of his brothers, he excelled at organization, logistics, and the development of forces. Guilliman should never have been content merely as a warrior on campaign. He was more suited to managing realms, raising and administering armies, and building institutions. He had once proposed that Space Marines, especially Ultramarines, should hold important civil offices throughout the Imperium. In Guilliman's view, the gene-enhanced warriors could govern more efficiently than ordinary mortals, and thus better secure the Empire's interests. That proposal had been flatly rejected by the Emperor and by Micardo. Space Marines were weapons, not a political class. History showed that when military commanders gained the loyalty of civil servants, dynastic change followed. Even if a general harbored no personal ambition, aides and lieutenants might cultivate it for him. Guilliman's intent might have been benevolent, but placing Space Marines in the machinery of state was a risk the Emperor would not accept. After some time, Guilliman himself had seen the problem and never pressed the issue again. Neos, keep Guilliman under close observation, Micardo advised. If anyone is to betray us, Guilliman could strike the most decisively. Both you and I understand the war potential contained in Ultramar's 500 worlds. If Macragge chose to, given a decade, they could produce scores of new Space Marines. In a few decades, with the Emperor's assent, Guilliman could field legions by the hundreds of thousands, a forced generation rate other Primarchs could only envy. Axis, standing nearby, fell quiet for a moment, mourning the future he had glimpsed for the Regent of Ultramar. Guilliman's personal duel skills were not the most fearsome, only slightly stronger than Lorgar, but his ability to raise, replenish, and lead armies was unparalleled. When the Great Heresy broke, even after terrible losses, Guilliman rebuilt his forces within years. Tens of thousands of Ultramarines moving in unison had kept War Master Horus awake with worry. The Chaos Gods themselves had interceded, casting Guilliman adrift in a warp storm and keeping him from reaching Terra, because if Guilliman had arrived with his legions, Horus might have surrendered without a battle. For all these reasons, measured caution was not only prudent, it was essential. Guilliman's war potential is arguably the strongest among the Primarchs, Micardo said. Raise his surveillance to the highest level. The Emperor nodded. Loyalty meant little in the face of a concentrated, reliable war machine with a vast, stable rear. Even an emperor of an ancient dynasty would watch such a general who commanded hundreds of thousands of troops that could be doubled or tripled. Wouldn't every ruler fear the sudden rise of a usurper? The Emperor's visions showed just such a thing later. Prudence now was necessary. Axis cleared his throat. Father-in-law, you don't think Guilliman might be the leader of that betrayal, do you? That is not my assessment, Axis, the Emperor replied gently. You do not fully understand Guilliman, nor the nature of Ultramar. His potential, were it turned to rebellion, is too great. Of all the Primarchs, he is the one I least expect to betray us. Axis had some sight of the future himself. Without the boy, they might never have perceived the Second Empire, nor foreseen the great heresy and the grim necessity of the Golden Throne. Axis shrugged. Perhaps he could one day find a way to warn Guilliman delicately. The 13th's wit would grasp a hint. Perdurabo of the 4th and Conrad Kurtz, newly attached to the 8th, should also be placed under observation, the Emperor added. After further discussion, the list of Primarchs to be watched was set. Lionel Johnson, Sanguinius, Perdurabo, Conrad Kurz, Mortarion, and Guilliman elevated to the highest monitoring priority. The secret session lasted an entire day, and the Emperor and Micardo identified who among the Gene Seed Primarchs would one day turn traitor and who were the unfortunate victims of fate. Guilliman, in particular, seemed an almost tragic case. A man who had done nothing to invite catastrophe, and yet whose power could draw storms down upon him. Axis returned to his quarters with his thoughts troubled. Under Imperial orders, Assassinorum operatives began to infiltrate the surroundings of each target Primarch to watch and report. Over the following decades, those agents would shadow the daily lives of each man and assess their temperament, loyalties, and potential to rebel. Their reports would be submitted to Lord High Counselor Micardo. At the same time, the Emperor sent word to the 12th Warhounds. Every battle brother abroad received orders to lay down their current tasks and hand them to supporting forces. They were to rendezvous with the Emperor, not on Terra, but on Nuceria. The Emperor and Axis would meet every company and cohort of the Warhounds there. A few days later, the Emperor, Axis, and a formidable Great Crusade fleet departed Holy Terra. For a time, the Emperor once more took direct command of the Crusade, rescinding the delegated authority he had often entrusted to Horus. During the campaigns, the Emperor would sometimes leave Horus in charge. Horus was the only one he trusted to command the Crusade in his stead, but on this occasion, the Emperor wished to lead. While the fleet burned through the warp, Axis stayed aboard the Emperor's flagship, and they spoke at length. "You didn't need to come in person for this mission, father-in-law," Axis said. "Replacing the Gene Seed in the 12th and dealing with Angron, myself and my Gene Seed can handle it." The Emperor sounded unconcerned. "Angron is the first Primarch I have seen turn to treachery. I will go myself." Strictly speaking, Angron had not yet appeared before them, and calling him a traitor in an absolute sense would be premature. This mission was as much a test as a purge. The Emperor intended to confront Angron and see whether the prophecy of revolt would unfold at their meeting. "Do the Warhounds need their memories adjusted?" Axis asked. "Erasing a Primarch leaves a wound. Brainwashing will make things simpler," the Emperor agreed. "Let Kasha and the Intellect Library handle it." Erasing a Gene Father from a legion's collective memory faced moral and political hazards. The bond between Space Marine and Primarch was deeper, even than their loyalty to the Emperor. If the 12th's war brothers learned their gene father had been removed, the blow might shatter them. Better to arrive ahead of the warhounds and set the stage quietly. 2 months later, the fleet halted in orbit above Nuceria. The sight of such a force cowed the planet's slaveholders. They trembled at the prospect of this power descending into their skies. Messengers sought parley and in many cases offered immediate surrender. The Emperor did not answer the slave owners of Nuceria right away. Instead, he ordered the fleet to scan the whole planet and bring back detailed intelligence. When the reports reached him and Axis, the Emperor's brow knit so tightly his disappointment was obvious. "To be honest, Axis, I am very disappointed with the 12th Primarch," he said. "Every other Primarch has managed, one way or another, to become the ruler of his world. Yet this one, after all these years, is still leading a ragged insurgency. Look at how they fight. No logistics, no supply lines, no allies, just a band of gladiators running around. They haven't built any institutions or governance. Their defeat is all but certain." Compared to the other Gene Seed Primarchs, Angron, this 12th Primarch, had been a disappointment. He was one of the greatest warriors among them. In the Emperor's estimation, he should have been the unquestioned master of his world. Instead, cursed by the butcher's nails, he led a small force of gladiators in scattered uprisings. The army was undisciplined and crude, composed almost entirely of combat slaves. After taking a city, they looted it, slew the local masters, then moved on. In the Emperor's view, there was little difference between their actions and banditry. A planet must be held and used as a stronghold to become useful to the Imperium. Uncoordinated raiding earned nothing. Even those civilians who had at first cheered them on were now disillusioned. Given time, such a force would only fail. "That thing, the butcher's nails, is a brain-control device," Axis said quietly. "It warps him." Angron was, without question, the Primarch with the most tragic fate. Axis could sympathize with the Emperor's frustration. All the other Primarchs had established rule, some over entire systems, but Angron, despite great martial power, had achieved almost nothing. If the Emperor had not intervened, the slave owners on Nuceria would have crushed him. "Yes," the Emperor said. "From the moment he got those nails, he was crippled. I need to speak with those slave owners." A short time later, the Emperor opened a remote conference with Nuceria's ruling class and declared himself the Lord of Mankind. He demanded the planet's unconditional surrender and submission. If they refused, he said, he would destroy the world. The slave owners proposed conditions. The Emperor rejected them all. His stance was simple and absolute: unconditional surrender or annihilation. They had 20 minutes to decide. When the 20 minutes elapsed, 100,000 Space Marines of the Golden Knights Legion would strike. Faced with an Imperial fleet blotting out the sky, the slave owners, reluctant, humiliated, had no real choice. They possessed a few relics from the Dark Age by way of oddities, but no fleet and no power to resist the Imperium. "Frankly, there's no reason to keep these scum," Axis said. "The rulers of Nuceria were cruel and corrupt." "There are too many such planets in the galaxy," the Emperor replied. "Not every ruler will be benevolent. The point of the Great Crusade is to bring humanity together. Oppression and exploitation have been part of human society for as long as men have had the power to do it. You cannot abolish that overnight. As long as these slave owners pay their tithes and provide levies when asked, this world is imperial. Those are the rules I've set. There are worse worlds than Nuceria. My suggestion is to purge the slave owners and install a new ruler, an imperial planetary governor," Axis persisted. "Then you'll simply get a new class of slave owners," the Emperor said. "I've seen it 1,000 times. People raised in such systems become the very thing they replace, and it would delay the crusade wildly. This planet has escaped ruin. It can now be put to use at full value. You must look further ahead." Axis considered this. "We could appoint a governor from the Imperium," he said. "That governor will need, at minimum, 200,000 troops to keep the planet pacified," the Emperor answered. "It will take a decade, likely more, to stabilize. And remember, they surrendered to me. Trust matters. Think of those who make oaths and then break them. One who betrays his vows loses credibility forever. An oath kept brings stability. An oath broken invites ruin and rebellion." He gave a historical example to make the point clearer. There are those who swore by the river and then reneged, and those who made the same vow and kept it. The outcomes were entirely different. A ruler who breaks his word begets contempt. I am the Lord of mankind. I must be seen to be fair. If I betray a surrender, what authority do I have left? What excuse would the worlds have to side with me? Axis had no better answer. Trust and the long-term legitimacy of imperial rule mattered more than the immediate vengeance against Nuceria's abusers. If the slave owners had resisted, the emperor could have acted, but because they had capitulated, the Imperium's word meant something. I understand, Axis said at last. The emperor paused, then offered a different course. If you sympathize with those gladiators, Axis, and with the people here, if you want to save them, you have an opportunity. They have surrendered. I can make this planet your homeworld. You would become its supreme ruler. Its fate would be your responsibility. Axis had no homeworld of his own. Nuceria, with its population and martial culture, was a tempting choice, especially for someone who valued its fighting stock. But the planet needed governance, restructuring, and to be brought into the imperial system without destroying what value it held. This will be a test, the emperor said. Managing a planet, its populace, its politics, its economy, is part of being a Primarch. If you cannot manage a world entrusted to you, what kind of gene seed Primarch are you? 160. Conquer the planet and enhance the technology of the Nucerian gladiators' Axis considered the situation. Truthfully, the ideal homeworld in his mind had been Catachan, not Nuceria. But Catachan had not yet been discovered by the Imperium, and even if it had, it would take ages to establish a steady supply of Catachan toughs. Catachan fighters were not made overnight. The planet might not even be settled by humans at all. Now that he had acquired the status of a gene seed Primarch, he had to choose a homeworld to replenish his forces, and the planet before him suited that need. Besides, who said a Primarch could only have one homeworld? After all, Guilliman ruled over Ultramar and its 500 worlds, and the people of Ultramar gladly swore to the Ultramarines. Then, Father, this planet will be the homeworld of our Golden Knights Legion, Axis declared. The Emperor laughed. Good. This world is fitting. It is yours now. As a Legion homeworld, I will grant it special tax exemptions. He patted Axis on the shoulder. How Axis dealt with the existing slave aristocracy was his business. The Imperium's interest was the allegiance and usefulness of the world. The surrender agreement with the Imperium and Nuceria was quickly formalized. All slave owners were summoned to the Emperor's flagship within a day to sign unconditional surrender papers. They agreed, if only because they did not know what it truly meant to be a gene seed Primarch. But when they saw the burly, towering warriors who accompanied Axis, men in superb power armor, armed with bolters and power weapons, some exchanged uneasy glances. If anyone could crush these gladiators, they thought, it would be Angron. Great Lord of mankind, one of the slave owners demanded, when we surrendered, you said this planet could remain autonomous. Why the change now? Once you surrender to the Imperium's orders are supreme, Axis answered. This world will be the homeworld of my legion. The Emperor had emphasized reputation, and Axis remembered it, yet all worlds ultimately existed to serve the Great Crusade. To become a Primarch's homeworld was an honor no one in their right mind would refuse. Tax relief, status, and greater opportunity for the planet's youth to become Astartes. But this is our planet. We already agreed to pay taxes, another said. No one wanted their rights stripped away after generations of rule. Axis's expression hardened. Did you not pledge unconditional surrender? Or was that a jest? It was unconditional. We did not negotiate, but you said we could remain autonomous. Before the man could finish, Axis extended a finger and sent out a golden wave of energy that blew him apart. The others froze. The Emperor watched without intervening. The episode was meant to teach a lesson. A leader must be decisive to keep credibility. Those who surrendered and then tried to renege on the deal left the Imperium no choice. You said unconditional surrender. Then unconditional it would be. Axis's gene seed Astartes closed ranks around the remaining slave owners and their guards, trapping them in the center. It seems you are refusing to accept surrender, Axis said coldly. My lord, we surrender to the Imperium. What will you do with us? The trembling slave owner asked. You will be given larger territories than you had before, Axis replied. Some nearby worlds will be converted to agricultural and mining planets. You will be sent to those mining worlds to provide the labor they require. He did not intend to compromise. This planet would be under his full control. Everything here must answer to him. Sending the slave owners to distant mining worlds expanded their nominal holdings while removing them from power, and the risks that came with that were well within the norms of imperial authority. The Emperor said nothing. He had no desire to intervene. If a Primarch claimed a homeworld, it was the Primarch's right to appoint its governors. And if former rulers failed the tithe or disobeyed imperial law, the Imperium had lawful grounds to execute them. A ruler must be ruthless when necessary. Enraged, a slave owner finally shouted, "Move! Kill him!" And a commander lunged forward. The guards drew chainswords and leveled bolters at Axis and the Emperor. But Axis's gene seed sons were faster. Bolter fire cracked out, shredding the ranks of guards and slave owners. Those who pressed forward were cut down by chainswords wielded by Golden Legion veterans. Nuceria's human enhancement technology traced back to the Dark Age of technology and had produced formidable gladiators, but it could not match Space Marine genetic engineering. The slave owners' elite guards were no match for the gene-forged warriors. "Clearly, you never intended to surrender," Axis said with a hint of amusement. He had been looking for a reason to eliminate them. They had provided it. "My gene seed sons, this world is the home of our legion. Purge the pests from it. Launch a ground strike and eliminate the armed forces of these false slave owners. Do not damage the planet. I want it intact," Axis ordered. "For the Gene Father, for the glory of the Golden Legion," his Astartes roared. Led by their captains, they boarded landing craft and descended to the surface to perform a decapitation campaign, targeting the private armies and command structures of the slave aristocracy. "Well done, Axis," the Emperor said. "I will instruct the Mechanicus to establish a full recruit training facility here and armories to support your legion." It made sense. The world was now a Primarch homeworld and would require investment. Whatever other Primarch homeworlds had, Nuceria would be owed the same. The Golden Legion's assault was swift and brutal. In hours, Space Marines in burnished golden armor struck into mansions and fortresses, annihilating the private armies and killing those of the slave families who had been directly responsible. They absorbed remaining military assets and seized relics and technology from the Dark Age of technology. The populace, slaves and common citizens alike, did not understand what was happening. The planet simply seemed to change hands overnight. Newly installed commanders, tall warriors in fine power armor, took control of former guard units and began governing the world. Within a dozen hours, Axis's forces had consolidated control. The Emperor watched, approving. Axis had proven more decisive than expected, straightforward, direct, and clean in military matters. Such a temperament made him an excellent commander for offensive operations, though perhaps less suited to the intricacies of grand strategy and the political maneuvering required of a war master. Horus, the Emperor reflected, remained the better candidate for that mantle. Horus would be loyal and able to command vast campaigns. Axis's strengths were different. With the slave owners neutralized, the gladiator rebels who had been plundering cities were next. The locals had little sympathy for them. The gladiators did not fight for freedom, but for themselves, looting and razing as they moved. These scattered elite fighters were soon hunted down by the Golden Legion. The gladiators' bodies had been augmented since childhood with Dark Age enhancements that made them far tougher than ordinary humans, though still no match for Space Marines. Where thousands had once roamed, only a few dozen survived after a short, bloody pursuit. Those survivors were quickly encircled. "This world resembles Fenris," the Emperor observed to Axis. "Fenris is a Nordic-themed world. This one is effectively a Roman-themed park." "Is there a Greek-themed one?" Axis asked. "Of course," the Emperor replied. They all were artificial constructs, fantasy ecosystems and races created with genetic technology. Medusa, Hydra, Kraken, these were real creations. They made elf-like and merfolk races, Egyptian settings, even Oriental styles. Many were lost in the Iron Man Great Heresy. Only a few theme worlds remain, Fenris and Nuceria among them. Axis's gaze lingered on the prisoners and the salvaged technology. There's a lot of Dark Age tech here, Father, especially the methods used to enhance gladiators. It is a civilian application of augmentation, fitting a gladiatorial culture, the Emperor said. But it is, at its core, genetic and cybernetic modification. Could that technology be adapted to strengthen Imperial auxiliaries, our mortal troops? Axis asked. Converting civilian augmentations into mass-producible military enhancements could multiply the effectiveness of Imperial forces. If it can be produced at scale and with acceptable side effects, then yes, the Emperor said. That's the question: production viability, success rate, and biological or psychological cost. I will collect all the Dark Age artifacts and evaluate them, Axis said. Good, but first we must deal with Angron. The Emperor's tone shifted. He has already been surrounded by your gene seed sons. We should go now.